The story begins with a man bleeding from the mouth, seeing everything as a beautiful dream. Before dying, he wished to destroy and devour that dream. Above him, a blond man with a weapon kept a serious gaze, while the redhead wanted to consume everything pierced by stakes. He stared at the night, thirsty for revenge. With a bitter smile, he lamented his fate and considered different paths. The blonde observed the body close to completing his mission. Closing his eyes, he felt a dark relief as he confirmed the enemy's death. The body exploded in light in the hall. The knight stepped back, finding the end fair. The scene changes now. Wu Yen, a novelist, rubs his face in a dark room, relieved, thinking that the villain's death meant the end of the series. He turned to the computer, determined to wrap everything up in the next chapter. Looking at the screen, he lamented writing a story against his will. He stretched, excited by the idea of dropping everything soon. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to leave regrets behind. A noise made him look back. Curious about its origin, he turned anxiously in his chair, finding the late night visit strange. Cold sweat formed. It was too late for someone to appear. He stood up, went to the door, and asked who was there. As he approached, the noise stopped, increasing his confusion. He doubted whether it really stopped or if it was just a drunkard. He ignored the sound, found it strange, and decided to sleep. As he turned around, a glowing paper floated near the door. Startled, he saw the luminous paper fall to the floor. He picked it up and read a message offering help whenever he wanted. A dark energy emanated from the paper, making him step back from the shadows. Arsene Adele, his villain, emerged. Paralyzed with fear, Wu Yen couldn't react. Adele smiled and said this was his death. He then looked at the writer, saying he had invested time and effort. He spoke of 10 years preparing his revenge for his family. Surrounded by darkness, he blamed Wu Yen for his failure. Extending his hand, he made a request to the creator. Wu Yen screamed in pain, engulfed by darkness. Satisfied, Adele ordered him to do it for him. The writer's face twisted. The image glitched and a thought was lost. A spider web appeared, marking the transition. Moments later, he woke up in a luxurious bed. Confused, he opened his red eyes slowly. Not understanding anything, he sat up, holding his head, thinking he had fainted. More lost. He found the unfamiliar room strange. He looked at the fine clothes, not recognizing them. He saw the elegant boots on his feet and grew even more confused. Standing up, he staggered to a mirror, panic rising in the reflection. He saw Arsene Adele's face. He recognized the crimson hair and cunning expression. Upon seeing the narrow eyes, he understood everything. He opened the shirt and saw his tattoo size, and an ironic smile confirmed it. He was Arsene Adele, looking at the mansion at sunset. He remembered that his death was near. He recalled that the character was a half-demon, a direct descendant. The ancestral power had elevated his bloodline, destroyed by 6 rival families. And now all that blood was in him. Sitting on the floor, leaning against the door, he understood the villain's origin. Failing in revenge, Adele dragged the creator into his place. Pensive, he reflected on his nearing death and opened the status window. The screen appeared. He remembered that the body was talented, but below the protagonist. With a resigned laugh, he thought that though attractive, the villain would never win. He panicked upon noticing he couldn't control Mina. Feeling cornered by his creation, something caught his attention. He turned curious on the bed. He saw a glowing paper and wondered what it was. He remembered it was the paper that appeared before Adele's arrival. He picked it up, thinking it useless, but accepted it, remembering the instruction to ask. He lost hope, seeing it blank. Not understanding, desperate, he shook the paper, fearing the worst. Relieved, he saw text magically appear on the surface. He read the instruction. If he didn't know how to use the gift, he should answer yes or no. He questioned being called creator, and accused the paper of being Adele. The paper only repeated the instruction. Forcing his cooperation, he grabbed a pen and wrote yes. The paper revealed itself as an information purchase system. It explained it would answer questions, some costing a lot. He wrote his first question: how to return to the real world. The answer was that it was impossible. Frustrated, he grumbled that he expected that and focused on survival. He then asked for the method to use mana and Adele's characteristics. Reading the content, he prioritized survival. A blue aura surrounded him. The paper said the question was free, and the knowledge would be printed on him. The paper asked for confirmation. He smiled and wrote yes, feeling the mana flow. He extended his hand and conjured a black sphere darkness, the ability to erase the five senses. He considered it a success, even if small, as it would be useful. His eyes glowed red, activating killing intent. He knew it would work against ordinary people. Now he needed to understand the mechanics of position transfer. One he remembered. It allowed him to swap places with an object ideal for assassination. With a cunning smile, he noted it only covered a small area, but it would improve with training. He fixed his gaze on a suit of armor and decided to test the technique. He focused. A blue aura emanated from his body. The armor shone brightly in response. In an instant, the two swapped places. The impact caused a loud crash, lifting dust and debris. He landed where the armor had been groaning in pain. Rushed footsteps were approaching. Even on the ground, he smiled with determination, willing to try 100 times if needed. Under the sunset, knights approached. Their leader ordered them to confirm his death. This time a night breeze blew, revealing the dark Arcane family mansion. Under a cloudy sky, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. An imposing figure in armor and a red cape stared down two tense servants. It was Captain Feltz of the County of Leon, interrogating them harshly about someone. Meanwhile, Adele was smiling in front of a door. The servant said he hadn't moved in days. Feltz reacted with disdain to the disturbing information. The door was forcefully kicked open, and the captain entered with his knights. The young man awaited them, seated with a sword on his lap and a blush aura around him. Feltz called him absurd and ordered his death. The protagonist's eyes glowed red. Using his ability, he marked the sword. He quickly swapped places with it, appearing in front of the enemy. The precise strike, he slashed the knight's throat. Feltz and another man were left in shock at the scene. The young man landed lightly while the enemy bled before him. The captain shouted to capture him immediately. He quickly jumped out the window, leaving the soldiers behind. During the fall, he activated his swap ability again. He landed painfully as the sword hovered above. Wounded, he decided to flee to the Arcane forest. Feltz saw him through the window and ordered the pursuit. A dark forest appeared, full of tall trees and hanging vines. He kept running, exhausted but determined. He thought he wouldn't survive, even having shaken them off. He decided to seek a portal to the demon realm. Leaning against a tree, he wondered if they would accept him. Worried, he questioned whether they had already found him. In the distance, knights spread out searching for him. He looked for the portal with alert and urgent eyes. A branch snapped under his foot, echoing through the woods. He froze, shocked at being discovered. A blue light revealed a presence approaching. Feltz emerged from the trees, sword in hand. The young man narrowly escaped with another jump and flash of blue. With few transfers left, he had to act quickly. Doubt crept in, consumed by desperation. He remembered the deal, but the cost was high. He tried to activate something but lacked the resources to pay. An invisible force hurled him into the air. Tumbling, he landed near a tree. Feltz appeared before him holding a greenish sword. He coldly declared that Adele would die there today. Bleeding, Adele mocked the captain's certainty. He grabbed the magic paper, saying there was still a way. The blue aura enveloped him. He was ready for his last resort. Feltz watched with contempt but acknowledged his resolute stance. Adele retorted, mocking adults who hunted a child. He teased whether Feltz would rather be a babysitter. Laughing at the thought, furious, the captain declared he would pierce the boy's heart with the count's sword. He attacked with a shout, swinging from above. Adele believed it was a valuable chance. The paper glowed intensely and blocked the strike. An ethereal voice thanked him for the payment received. It announced that the boy would be guided to the demon portal. Adele smiled as he felt the energy flowing around him. Feltz watched in horror as magical light emerged from his own weapon. A massive red explosion erupted in the distance. Adele was enveloped in blue energy. The transfer was activated. He appeared high above near the explosion. Startling, Feltz, the captain screamed in desperation. Begging him to stop, Adele kept running, ignoring the monstrous pursuer behind him. He spotted the red portal and confirmed he found. Feltz roared, clutching a tree trunk and vowing not to let him escape. Without wasting time, he hurled it at the boy, crossing the distorted space. Adele was nearly struck by the trunk. Surrounded in blue, he smiled, promising they'd meet again. Feltz's jaw clenched, watched him vanish. Adele, wrapped in a blue aura floated within the flaming portal. Enraged, the captain cursed him as he disappeared. The final scene showed an eclipse over a desolate landscape. A stone pillar stood out in a dark environment. While chewing dried meat, he wondered how much time had passed. He recalled that, after crossing the portal, he woke up in a dungeon made for demonic arts. Finding dried meat and a stone bed there felt strange, making him suspect someone was guarding treasure. Before him stood a stone guardian, and he thought about the deflective barrier and the mysterious origin of the place. He admitted the guardian was terrifying, and that facing it now would be suicide. The nearby scroll shines intensely. Catching his attention, the object warns it's a one-time chance. There's a penalty and one can only offer what they truly possess. He forces a smile and concludes that the entity behind the message is insane, but tolerant. With eyes closed, he reflects on something that intrigued him. He looks at a stone wall and finds it strange. Upon touching it, he feels something on the other side as if it were a dell. A message appears, preventing him from interacting with what he sensed in the wall. Disappointed, he thinks that the wall might deactivate the barrier, and laments the lost chance. Facing the glowing barrier, he decides to look for another way to escape. In front of him, he notices a stone on the ground, and suspects it fell from the guardian and might be useful. He uses his skill position transfer. Designate type with the stone as his target. Then he activates position transfer. Move type, confident in his plan. Looking back, he says the plan worked. The guardian awakens and charges with bared fangs, taking him by surprise. The scene shifts to a dark castle under an eclipse. Inside the castle, a bucket falls and someone is reprimanded. Two servants argue before a horned figure. The figure is Crete, patriarch of the Iberus family of the Demon Kingdom. Entering his chamber, he says his daughter will soon try to invade the mid-level hidden domain. He admits the situation is complicated on the throne. He thinks that if she wins, she'll gain access to Satan, but will disobey his orders. The image of a sad young woman with a bloodied sword reveals her desire for revenge against the humans who killed her mother. Crate's eyes, doubting she'll survive in a place full of ruthless demons. A servant enters, alarmed, calling for the patriarch. With glowing eyes, he asks the reason for the commotion. The servant apologizes and says, "There's an unknown person in the hidden domain." Surprised, he asks if there was unauthorized entry. She confirms it. He asks who the intruder is, and she replies that an internal function was activated, but they don't know who it is. Tapping his fingers, he suspects someone was forcefully summoned through the gate of war. Unconcerned, he says the intruder will die in orders. Focus on his daughter's trial. Receiving confirmation watching through the window, he thinks that, if the intruder survives, they may be useful as a pawn. Back in the dungeon, the protagonist is hurled by a blue explosion. Screaming, gasping, he realizes he fought a wolf and nearly died. Sitting and seeing the guardian, he thinks that, even with the barrier gone, escape will still be difficult. He remembers the guardian was made of stone. With a smile, he decides to try something new. He activates position transfer. Designate type, again targeting the guardian. With a grin, he confirms that the plan worked. He switched places with the stone wolf, which appears where he was before. The wolf, confused, tries to understand what happened. He watches the wolf and concludes the creature will die. Believing the danger is over, he thinks about finding the exit. Then a new winged creature with red eyes appears. Swallowing hard, he realizes this enemy is more dangerous than the last. The creature screams while running, and he knows it works with inanimate targets. Running through the dungeon, he knows he can use transfer as long as there are targets in the traps. Surrounded by blue energy, he moves quickly. He soon stops in front of a large glowing portal, from which a voice welcomes him. Confused, he wonders why an intruder would be welcomed before the portal. He suspects it's a boss room and imagines what awaits him. A death knight appears and he tries to identify the creature. Worried, he senses the knight's power resembles felt. The skeleton surrounded by blue aura expresses respect for him. While the designate skill is activated, the monster points to a spot. He runs thinking he found the treasure box. He arrives at a large ornate chest with a black dragon engraved. Seeing the dragon, he tries to remember where he saw it before. Upon recalling the list of demon families tied to the 7 deadly sins, he's shocked. An image of Crate appears, associated with pride and the black dragon Bolton. The pride sweating cold, he curses, realizing he's dead if caught. He decides to open the chest and run with anything useful. Upon opening, dark energy bursts out. A dark thing grabs his face. Suffocating him, he struggles to break free, groaning in pain, managing to pull away. He falls to the ground, gasping amid a dark substance. He soon screams in pain as a purple energy envelopes his body. He stretches out his hand in desperation. Blood gushes, signaling a severe wound. As he screams in pain, something strange lies on the ground, leaning on a dagger. He wonders how long he was unconscious and if he lost his left eye. Terrified, he notices a change in the eye and suspects it's now black. A window appears and he suspects the liquid caused the transformation, revealing a new race alignment and the Eye of Superbia. The ability offers extreme vision and is activated upon killing an enemy. He smiled, confident that he would no longer lose to weak groups, and that coming to the demon realm had been the right choice. He stood up and decided he had gotten what he needed. Now it was time to leave. In front of him stood a door engraved with dragons, and he evaluated his options and the threat outside. With a resigned smile, he thought that if he stepped out, he would die unless he kneeled quickly. He touched an insignia on his neck and decided to hide, knowing that being from the arson family was a death sentence. Meanwhile, the voice of the Death Knight ordered them to open the door. He was startled by the command. The skull repeated the order, announcing the arrival of His Highness. Increasing his surprise, he suspected that the signs in the area indicated a training domain for noble families. He decided to find out who the owner was, and grabbed a magic scroll to write, fearing he'd stolen the reward. Adele asked for the identity of the closest person, but the cost was 100 gold coins or a relic item, which made him desperate. In a panic, he offered 100% of his maximum mana, betting on recovery if he survived. The scroll accepted the offer and began to drain his mana. Footsteps approached as the artifact revealed who was nearby. It was Renee, youngest daughter of Crate Bears. Shocking Adele, he despaired. Certain he would die, he realized the domain belonged to Renee, and that the Eye of Superbio was her reward. He foresaw she would defeat the Guardians and come face him. Renee destroyed the Guardian with a single strike. Even in danger, he decided he had to act. He stood firm, fists clenched, waiting for the encounter. The young girl with horns and glowing eyes stared at him, asking who he was. He kneeled, showing submission, forcing a smile. He congratulated her for completing the domain and proving her worth. Renee, surrounded by a dark aura, drew her sword and demanded an explanation. Sweating, he lied that he had been assigned as her guard by the Patriarch. Noticing she hadn't recognized the Eye of Superbia, she stared at him with blue eyes. Assessing his words, Adel claimed that despite his looks, he was skilled and decided to use her to escape. Renee looked at him with disdain, and he wondered if she doubted him. He activated teleportation and swapped places with the throne sword. He surprised her by reappearing in front of her. Grabbing her wrist, he asked if she liked the demonstration, confident he could protect her. Annoying her, he feared he had gone too far. Crossing her arms, she grumbled, letting him believe she had forgiven him. Adele said they would leave now, and told her to report to the Patriarch. Agreeing, she pretended she had urgent matters to attend to. He opened the door hastily, assuring her he wouldn't be late. Renee watched with curiosity and surprise. Outside, she encountered her father, Crete, and his guards. He greeted her with a calculating look and a slight smile. This surprised the protagonist. Realizing he was her father, anxious, he wondered why the Lord was there. He feared the Patriarch would discover the Eye of Superbia and kill him. Crete asked his daughter if she had completed the domain. A bit hesitant, she replied yes. The Patriarch ordered them to follow him. The young man observed, trying to understand the order. Everyone began to walk behind the leader. He realized he couldn't flee or use the magic scroll. He recognized the architecture and concluded they were at the Bear's mansion. He followed the Patriarch as he led the way. At one point, Cree ordered the guards to leave. Continuing on, he asked the protagonist to wait there. The young man thought maybe this was his chance to escape, but he noticed shadows watching and gave up the idea. The scene shifted to a room with large windows. Renee formally introduced herself to her father, who sat at the table. Creek told her she had completed her final task. She was shaken when he said she would go to a training center. With no choice, she accepted. The Patriarch fell silent. Deep in thought, he changed the subject and asked about the young man. Rennie hesitated, remembering the fight and their meeting. She replied only that he was strong. Crate smiled slightly, finding it interesting. He said that, for proving her worth, she could go to Satan. Hearing that, she was surprised and thanked him enthusiastically. Crete reflected that he had expected the intruder to die, but he had survived and taken the Eye of Superbia. He also concluded that, with his daughter's evaluation, the young man could be useful. Meanwhile, the protagonist waited impatiently, unsure how much time had passed. A large castle rose beneath the evening sky. Inside, Adele was being guided down a corridor lit by a grand chandelier. Heavy door creaked open, and the guide announced the visitor to the patriarch. Adele found himself before Creek, seated on a throne behind a table. He observed him with his chin resting on his hand. Nervous and sweating, the young man questioned what that figure was thinking. Standing on the carpet, he asked why he had been left alive. Patriarch gave a faint smile, wrapped in a purple aura, and called him a bastard. Then he released a surge of purple energy, accusing him of deceiving his daughter. Struck by the force, the young man showed signs of pain. He was forced to the ground, kneeling and bowed under the pressure. Even so, he stated that he had no intention of killing him. A powerful figure pondered his words with a subtle smile. Panting, his face tense, he commented on the incredible demonic energy. With hands clasped and a slight smile, he praised the boy's cleverness and asked for his name. Still kneeling, he revealed himself as a doll. Repeating the boy's name made a dark energy form in his hand. Lifting him into the air, he left him confused. With a sinister smile, he drew him closer. Terrified, he managed to ask what he wanted from him. He was ordered to open his mouth, and a small dragon began to be forced inside. With a wicked grin, he commanded him to simply continue, saying what he had told the daughter. While choking in pain, he warned that the poison would shred his heart if he had any other ideas. Turning around, he announced that he would prepare a place for the boy to stay, until summoned soon after. He ordered him to leave his presence. Adele, still on the floor, coughed and sweated, shocked by what had just happened. The scene shifted to the exterior of a house, with lit windows under the starry sky. Inside the residence, a man informed him that this would be his new room. As he said goodbye and wished him rest, Adele reflected that he had now become independent by Crete's will. With a sigh, he thanked the fact he was still alive. Though he felt used sitting on the bed, he considered that being partially recognized by a demon might not be so bad. Determined, he thought he needed to get rid of the thing on his neck, and hoped his plan would work. A dragon-shaped creature lay motionless in his hand, confirming the plan's success. Observing it, he felt relief, but also wondered how to act, since the Lord would notice if he killed it. Suddenly the little serpent stirred, red eyes opening. Adele realized it woke because the mana flow had been cut, and he offered it dark energy through his finger. The dragon licked the energy, and he urged it to go back to sleep. Lying in bed, he finally relaxed, and wondered how much of the trap had been removed from his throat. Exhausted, he felt he would faint at any moment. Before passing out, he decided to check his status, and a blue window appeared before him. He noticed that his position transfer had increased to level 2, but his mana was still negligible. He wondered how to increase it, reflecting until he had an idea. The scene cut to Renee, who said she didn't like this. Smiling awkwardly, he recalled it had been 3 days since he was assigned as her guard. As they walked through a garden, he noticed her cold, silent reactions. Seen running ahead, he lamented her change, once cheerful now darkened by her mother's death. Suddenly a voice called out to both of them urgently from afar. Surprised, he turned, and heard the messenger inform them that the patriarch was summoning them. Inside the room, the two stood before a table, discussing a dangerous entry from the throne. Crete warned of the futility of chasing goals in treacherous lands. A discomfort hung over them. He questioned his presence there, while she was surrounded by a dense aura. He proposed a deal, allowing passage if a protector accompanied the journey. Without hesitation, she refused, making him think she simply hated him. A pause described the destination, a place of historical conflict, constant danger, and promising youth. With distant eyes, she asked why anyone would seek such a place, contrasting with his hesitation. Smiling, he saw opportunity in adversity. Confident in what he knew of past conflicts, determined, he accepted the condition, but presented his own request. Crate's gaze fixed on the young man, evaluating the audacity of the request. Swallowing hard, he articulated his desire, seeking something essential to his energy core. A subtle smile formed on the patriarch's face, surprised by the unusual request. A mutual tension arose, both aware the other was hiding something. Crate laughed, called the boy insolent, and granted the request. Renee was dismissed, and with a respectful gesture, she withdrew as she left. He noticed her reluctance to join the journey, remaining in the patriarch's presence. He thought about the promised gift. Imagining its form, crepe revealed the magnitude of the favor. An ancestral treasure, protected and sensitive. A hand extended, emanating energy, offering this in place of a dark fate surrounded by purple light. The leader invited him to approach, preparing to pass down an ancient art. It left him stunned to see the technique he would receive. Immersed in purple energy, he heard ancient words, kind of prayer. Echoing around him, he kneeled on the ground, exhausted as the purple aura wrapped around his body. Crete smiled as he noticed the resilience amid the intensity of the ritual. Finding him intriguing, processing the information, he is surprised to discover the divine origin of the granted energy. Patriarch mentions an unexpected connection between the bloodline and arcane forces, causing perplexity. With an enigmatic smile and glowing eyes, he reveals having secured loyalty through a subtle and permanent method. Pondering in silence about the family information, he is confused by something that doesn't fit. The audience ends with permission to go on his way. Sunlight filters through the dense foliage in the heart of nature. He seeks focus, sitting on a stone in meditation. A confident smile appears as he chooses the natural refuge to master the volatile energy. A dark aura begins to emanate, signaling the start of his practice. Surrounded by the dark energy, he accepts the irreversibility of the new power source. A determined smile marks the acceptance of his own path. A dark and imposing entity emerges from the aura, uttering a word of contempt. He recoils in shock, not understanding the creature. The colossal figure reveals itself, commenting on the unexpected blood heritage. Amid the energy swirl, he voices a question to confirm the presence's identity. Red eyes glow as the entity identifies itself as a primordial deity. Fear reveals itself on his face as he questions the deity's intentions. The entity reveals a hidden reason for sparing him. Generating confusion, a strange affinity is mentioned before, granting a mark to those who follow a similar path. Under intense energy, a mark is imprinted on his body, symbolizing power and a warning against arrogance. The new strength is felt, revealing that the mark grants power in multiple chances. An ironic smile appears upon noticing the mark's visual aspect. While a figure approaches from the shadows, a sudden surprise breaks the calm of the moment. Renee watches with an expression of surprise. Her unexpected presence raises concern about whether she heard anything. Her eyes widen, and she expresses confusion at hearing him use an unexpected term. A forced smile tries to make sense of the strange naming. A bird. Bird rests on a branch, observing the peace around a distant building. Time passes and a display shows his progress, with a significant increase in energy and skills. Proud of the advancement, he shows off his accomplishments, crediting the growth to his own qualities. With a radiant smile, he envisions a future of power, capable of breaking limits in conquering hidden lands. An immediate obstacle arises in his thoughts. While training outdoors, he is watched with amusement and irritation for his choice of location. Caught off guard, he stops training. When called, Renee responds, while a hint of frustration shows. He notices with relief the change in attitude, realizes the misunderstanding based on his power. A faint smile of acceptance appears on her face, as if endorsing the attributed identity. He considers the convenience of the misunderstanding, but worries about the social implications. Adele calls her again, and she reacts with a jolt and obedience with a smile. He acknowledges the difference and asks her to be informal. Renee hesitates with a doubtful expression before replying. Adele explains he is acting out of duty, but asks to be treated without formality. Smiling again, she accepts the request with an idea in mind directly. She makes a simple request. After his efforts, a bead of sweat slides down as he is surprised by her boldness. Justifying herself, she quickly adopts informality, something linked to the nature of her lineage. She points out urgency, and the task is accepted with resignation under the gaze of a bird. She rests while being served, and alignment arises for the interrupted plan. Holding a blade, she feels the urgency of time before a crucial event. Desiring a vital artifact, a glowing chest emerges, representing the essential item to face dangerous challenges. She turns with seriousness upon hearing her name called. Adele asks how the preparations are going, but she responds with slight resentment. He justifies the question as concern for human dangers, but she claims to be prepared. He insists she's not ready, suggesting she review the items carefully. He presses with a smile, saying it's to avoid future problems. Renee confronts him, demanding honesty, but he maintains the protector facade. Her firm gaze follows her accusation of dishonesty. Smiling nervously, he hears her ask where he was planning to go. Behind her back, a sinister aura surrounds her. After asking if he's already tired of her causing distress, Adele confesses the plan, justifying it as a safety measure and begging for forgiveness. She considers it in silence. While the plea persists, a memory lights her up, mentioning something forgotten, and he encourages her to return. With a radiant smile, she uses an unexpected term to describe her readiness. Putting away his sword, he states that preparation is not yet complete. She soon declares her intention to join him on the expedition. Worried, he tries to postpone the adventure, but she insists on departing. The scene shifts to a dark and macabre place, revealing a land haunted by death. Conversation unfolds, discussing a place of grim history and spectral presences. A thoughtful expression arises as he reflects on the magnitude of the place and its effect on Renee. Adele's gaze reflects concern over the growing hostile forces and the possible need for external help. As he walks, he assesses the difficulty of a discreet escape. Smiling confidently, he offers a way out, giving her the chance to stay behind if continuing becomes too hard. Afraid of being discovered by the patriarch, he tries to convince her, but it's no use. She insists she's fine looking back. He states that there's a secret place. The light under the sky indicates the passage. She points to a hidden path, revealing a secret access and surprising him with a smile. He realizes her familiarity with the hideaways, recognizing the place isn't strange to her. Her posture suggests experience in evasion. She's a master of escape routes. Leaving the basket aside, they agree it's better to move on before being discovered. Footsteps mark the beginning of their retreat. The pair moves along a rocky path, leaving the forest toward mountainous landscapes. Adele asks how far they still have to go, smiling, maintaining a good mood during the journey. Renee shows surprise upon learning the young man had rarely left where they came from. The mountainous view confirms the destination is near, just beyond the visible peak. A lone stone draws attention. In the damp environment, a firm step disturbs the soil, displacing debris and revealing something. Under the rocks, they reach their destination, and Adele's expression reveals surprise at the place. Before them stands an old, ruined structure wrapped in a gloomy atmosphere. Irritated expression crosses her face, while in her mind she insults him. Her look indicates the need to keep her identity secret, away from certain knowledge. Pointing to a spot on the ground, she says only he knows the entrance and they must dig there. A circular mark on the ground confirms they're in the right place. Guarded by disfigured creatures, there's hesitation about who should go first. Quickly resolved by Renee, a light illuminates the passage. The light reveals an unexpectedly bright interior. Contrary to what was expected, Renee points the way within the glow that surrounds them. The true destination appears, a vast structure with a greenish spectral aura. The oppressive atmosphere causes discomfort in Adele, who senses the presence of restless new souls. With determination, Renee moves forward and Adele follows, ready for what comes next. Skeletal hand rises from the ground. Skeletal warriors emerge, blocking the path. The duo finds themselves surrounded, standing back to back, ready to fight. Adeline trusts the front line to his companion. A blue energy envelopes Renee's blade, ready to strike with an explosive movement. She charges the enemies, tearing them apart. Adele watches his ally's efficiency and senses a power source nearby. He defends himself from an attack and assures he'll reach Renee soon. Skeletal fragments begin to regroup. Renee finds herself surrounded again, surprised by the enemy's return. A shocked expression takes over as she sees the fallen being resurrected. A skeletal figure with burning eyes appears, questioning the intruder's audacity. A necromancer with a glowing orb orders the invaders' annihilation. The dude retreats before the endless flow and points at the caster as the source of the problem. He instructs not to stop and to push forward through the chaos. He defends against attacks and tries to break through using his weapon. With a swift strike, he drops a threatening enemy. After neutralizing the foe, he announces he's found the solution and Renee responds quickly. While she battles, Adele spots the key target. The necromancer intensifies the reanimation using the orb in his hand. Adele realizes he must reach the power source. He focuses on the orb and reveals his intent to use a new ability to acquire. A massive guardian with red eyes blocks Renee's path. Adele is surprised by the challenge and warns his companion. She strikes with a battle cry. With explosive force, she advances and clears the enemies with a decisive blow. Adele runs over the remains of the defeated creature, pressing forward to the objective. He focuses on a spot marking a target for transfer. Propelled, Adele launches himself into the air toward the necromancer. He surprises the dark figure by revealing his new skill, object position swap, with a shout. He activates the swap, changing the course of the battle. The necromancer finds himself holding something unexpected, momentarily vulnerable. The orb is now in Adele's hands and he celebrates the capture. Terror takes over the necromancer upon realizing the loss. With a purple explosion, the orb shatters in Adele's hand. The skeletal horde around them collapses into ruins. Adele expresses relief at the success and Renee confirms the victory. Someone murmurs thanks for the freed souls. It makes them reflect on the tragedy of the place. Wishing peace to the trapped spirits, Renee calls out, indicating something. She soon asks if the task is complete, and he smiles, saying it's time for the reward. A gleaming chest emerges from the ground. The reward is finally before them. Inside the chest was a black dagger that converts darkness into strength, and a ring capable of absorbing energy and moonlight. Holding the dagger, he admired his newly obtained weapon with a confident smile. He thought about how the blade would allow him to maximize his potential linked to darkness. Showing off the ring he had found, looking less enthusiastic but still acknowledging its value. He suggested that Renee keep the ring, while he would choose the dagger for himself. The two agreed on the proposal, concluding the distribution of the artifacts they had found. With a gentle gesture, he extended his hand to place the ring on her finger. A close-up showed the ring being delicately positioned. A wave of surprise appeared on her face as she received the ring. She seemed uncomfortable as he stared at her. Adele reflected, questioning whether rings held any special meaning in the demon realm. She remained blushing, a subtle mana aura surrounding her, indicating the artifact's reaction. She showed fascination with the sensation, and the boy expressed satisfaction at seeing that the gift pleased her. He then turned his gaze to the gold in the chest, declaring that since he took care of the boss, the fortune belonged to him. Before he could revel in it, he found himself at the mercy of the sword. Under her stern gaze, he quickly corrected himself, saying he would split the gold evenly down to the last coin. After clearing the domain, they returned to the mansion. Before dinner, the system displayed Adol's status screen, showing his progress, especially in mana. Satisfied with his increase in power, he noted that his mana now rivaled an intermediate level in the demon realm. A few days later, Crete summoned them, and they stood before him. The imposing patriarch informed them that it was time to leave. For Satan, he announced that they would depart for the capital that day, for the academy entrance exam. Catching them both by surprise, he asked if they were prepared. Receiving a yes as confirmation, he then dismissed them without a formal farewell, indicating that such ceremony was unnecessary. Renee lowered her gaze, thoughtful in response to the patriarch's words. In a respectful gesture, she bowed. Before leaving, Adele announced he would be going with her. Confirming his intention, Crake called for a subordinate. Catching his attention, he expressed a wish for success, hoping he would do well. The young man responded with a smile and a simple yes, accepting the encouragement. Above, an elegant carriage waited in the mansion courtyard, surrounded by servants ready for departure. A servant confirmed that departure would be immediate, ensuring everything was prepared. Crate briefly appeared, watching the youth's departure. Standing still, Adele reflected, realizing that, even without a formal farewell, parental feeling was present. He admitted his apprehension about the future, but reaffirmed his determination to achieve his goal. In Satan, the carriage moved swiftly, leaving the mansion behind, symbolizing the beginning of a new chapter. The wheels spun quickly, kicking up dust. Inside the vehicle, Adele appeared calm. He noticed his partner's prolonged silence since they departed, wondering if he had done something wrong. She remained quiet, only glancing at him, indirectly comparing her initial impression. She found him more attractive than she had imagined. Breaking the silence, he made a comment about the weather. While she thought about his apparent lack of power, Renee, deep in thought, questioned whether the boy was really a priest. While he wondered why she was staring at him, she scolded herself for doubting him, remembering seeing him speak with the demon god. While he wondered if he had said something wrong, taking a relaxed posture in his seat, he looked at his hand. She turned her gaze away, embarrassed. The ring revealed its meaning in the demon realm, an eternal vow when given by someone of the opposite sex. She reflected on having received the ring so casually, questioning the nature of the vow made. Curiosity shone brightly in her eyes. Adele called her and informed her they would arrive an hour earlier than expected. She reacted with surprise at the news of the early arrival. She gave a brief and cold response, leaving him confused by her attitude. He asked if he had bothered her, but she told him to shut up, saying she wanted to nap, and he accepted. Falling silent, the carriage stopped, and the young man announced they had reached their destination. The imposing capital of the demon realm revealed itself, with its medieval buildings, under a bright sky. Both stepped down from the carriage with their luggage. Taking in the grandeur of the city, he noted that the capital didn't differ much from the human realm, describing the architecture as medieval. Looking around, he observed some of the most notable physical differences among the inhabitants, like horns and other features. He pointed out that elite demons had distinct tattoos, noticing one on someone's neck similar to his own. Renee hurried him along, ready to move forward. While he was still processing his observations, carrying the bags, he asked where they should go now, reminding her of the deadline for the entrance exam. He then suggested they use the 2 remaining days to explore the capital, but she refused without hesitation. Hearing her response leaves him flustered. Looking slightly disturbed, he asks if she's okay, but insists there's no time and they must register immediately. As he walks, he thinks about Renee's story, her reclusion after her mother's death, and how her current behavior seems to contradict that. They arrive at Satan the Academy, a grand and bustling building that impresses the young man with its size. A registration officer informs her that she is already enrolled and must return in 2 days, then calls the next in line. Battle steps up to the officer attempting to register for admission. Questioning his identity, the officer notes he doesn't seem like a full demon. Unlike the other candidates, he reacts with anger and offense that a half-demon would dare apply. Adele, disheartened, sighs inwardly as he envisions a difficult future due to his heritage. The scowling figure points forward. Filled with disdain, Renee introduces herself calmly. Indifferent to the tension, the officer's gaze lands on the girl, recognizing her lineage from the 7 deadly sins. She responds, revealing her identity and the bear's family. Renee presents her companion as her protector. The figure expresses disdain at the combination of lineage and role. A violent aura fills her, defending the honor of her house. The tension dissipates as the official backs down and resumes the process. Adele reflects on the hostility half-demons face. They leave the registration area and head off to find a place to rest. In front of a modest building, he decides it's good enough. A smile appears as he stands beside his companion, accepting the limited options. Looking upward for a moment, he thinks about the lack of resources. Proposing they enter, he receives a silent nod of agreement. They go in and are greeted by a discreet welcome sign at the counter. He requests accommodations for 2 for a short stay. Renee is surprised by the question about room division. He clarifies the need for separate rooms. Cost is settled with a handful of golden coins. As she heads upstairs, Adele remains below. With a smile, he takes care of the luggage and assures her she can rest. She glances back before continuing on. Adele meditates on how different this place is compared to their usual luxury. The building rests beneath the sky throughout the night, marking the rest period under daylight. An imposing fortress is revealed. At the entrance, a figure directs the candidates to proceed and wait. Amid the crowd, they observe the scale of the event. Silent fear sets in, aware of the danger from the demon's true nature of hunting humans. In line, They are instructed to present identification and prepare to board. A mechanized train appears to transport them. Surprise sets in upon seeing the train. The train moves forward surrounded by ethereal energies, crossing dimensional barriers. As the journey continues, Adul realizes the outer fortress was only a fraction of the enormity seated. They prepare for the imminent arrival. Breath held as the journey ends. Before them, the fortress of Satan is revealed, confirming they've reached their destination. The train stops and smoke lingers in the air. After completing its task, they leave the train and join the others, being guided toward the examination facilities. They follow the indicated path toward the testing site. The doors open, swallowing the crowd of candidates into the hall. Adel feels the enormity of the place. His eyes scan the assembly, noticing others of his kind. He sees imposing figures, the supervisors. He thinks that making a good impression might smooth the way forward. Renee announces the start of the next phase. The door shut with a thunderous sound. The light dims and energy surrounds them all. Adel wonders if the darkness is part of the test. A single powerful word echoes, imposing silence. A figure emerges from afar. Drawing all eyes, the horned woman fixes her gaze on those present. She greets the newcomers with sharp words. Adele feels the weight of her words and the intensity of her voice. A blue aura emerges from the woman, taking the shape of a beast. The exam begins under a blinding surge of blue energy. Candidates stagger and Renee demands focus. The energy causes anguish reactions, making people bend under the pressure. Observers note a candidate collapsing completely. They comment that mental strength outweighs raw talent. In this test, it's revealed that the director oversees this phase, testing mental endurance. One observer notes that almost no one remains standing. Someone declares the stage sufficient. The female observer expresses surprise at so many dropouts. The other supervisor sees promise in those who lasted longer. They comment on heirs of influential houses. Among those who passed, Adele is noticed, and they question his identity. He remains standing, struggling and breathing heavily. The two acknowledge his resilience as greater than expected. The pressure on him intensifies. His body yields to agony. An observer notices an alarming anomaly. The energy was disrupted by a dark red force capturing the protagonist. The observers expressed shock at the manifestation. Even the director seems surprised, fixing her gaze on the chaos. Adele was engulfed by the crimson aura, radiating a dangerous power. One of the observers decided to eliminate the threat. Drawing his weapon, Adele endured overwhelming pressure. Though it didn't appear noticeable, suddenly the atmosphere around him shifted, exuding a cold and relentless intent. A lethal and calculated killing intent emerged, drawing the immediate attention of everyone present. One of the supervisors, guided by instinct, remained calm, observing the energy shift. A silent confrontation arose among the observers. The supervisor felt disturbed, irritated by the influence of a mere rookie. The other supervisor smiled subtly, finding the scene amusing. Meanwhile, candidates continued to fall, succumbing to the pressure. Adele struggled to maintain his sanity, seeking a way to resist. He realized his dark essence might be the key to enduring. Yet he decided to channel that energy. Having no other choice, a scream burst out as the dark energy consumed him, revealing a crimson glow in his eyes. From above, the source of the blue aura observed the young man's tenacity, considering intensifying the test amid the turbulence. Adele smiled, holding his ground where the blue aura and the darkness collided. The reaction surprised the supervisor, who hesitated for a moment. Anteing Adele stabilized himself. Despite the lingering dark aura, he realized his method had worked. Feeling a strange sense of relief, his concern then shifted to someone else in the test. Renee remained firm, showing great resilience. Bolton, Hair of Envy, also resisted, his eyes glowing intensely prone. Hair of Lust remained serene and powerful. Samuel, Hair of Gluttony, observed the surroundings, enduring. Other hairs linked to sloth and greed also remained standing. A reflection emerged. Many of these strong individuals were destined for a tragic end. Adele noticed that 6, including Renee, had passed the test. He felt surprised as he contemplated the scene. His gaze focused on the details. The cascade of light hair, the glow in her red eyes and the dark thorn-like mark. Without a doubt, that figure was his future worst adversary. Diana, the Heir of Wrath, An official announcement marked the end of the first phase of the exam. Adele thought it ironic that Diana was just a candidate, given that the Wrath lineage traditionally ruled. I questioned whether past events led to this direct successor. Upon finishing that thought, he expressed disbelief. Maybe at the results or something he didn't understand. Failed candidates protested, confronting a supervisor without hesitation. He silenced one of them with a show of strength. Coldly looking at one of the students, he said he didn't care what their father did. He ordered them not to make him repeat himself. He declared that those who couldn't endure 5 minutes were dismissed. The doors closed, sealing the fate of the eliminated. Adele pulled himself together, relieved to have passed the test. Looking to the side, he recognized the figure on the upper-level director. It was Jujin, one of the most formidable forces in the demon realm. A hand rested on the blade, focused on the next phase, which would be even more challenging. Adele heard a comment about Renee. She was an Amazon, a combat genius. Renee was being watched by the other candidates. Clearly popular, Adele reflected that it made sense for the heirs of the 7 deadly sins to have resisted. After facing the killing intent of the director, he felt frustration despite having resisted too. No one noticed his achievement. Renee approached and asked if he had passed the test, to which he informed her that he had also been approved. Adele confirmed, feeling that he had managed to leave a mark, beyond just being another candidate. A strong voice caught everyone's attention. The purple-haired supervisor introduced himself as Aries, instructor in charge. Adele, looking at him, thought he was holding a sashimi knife. Aries congratulated the survivors on their mental resilience. He explained that the test evaluated clarity under extreme pressure, simulating future torture scenarios. He revealed that the 8 candidates who passed would gain advantages, including special access to weapons in the next stage. Adele felt satisfaction and relief at the unique opportunity. He noticed the atmosphere shift, feeling the envy of those who hadn't achieved the same. With seriousness, Aries turned to the group, ready to explain the next test. Another instructor added, the second phase would require them to demonstrate talents and abilities against specific targets. One candidate processed the information, understanding it would define their future specialization. Adele considered the implications and asked who the human they would face would be. Aries announced the next stage and with a gesture, revealed the opponents. An intense blue energy filled the space. The force erupted, spreading around the candidates. A figure cloaked in mystical aura, bearing a distinct symbol, materialized in the glow. Alongside her, a decorated blade shone with the same energy. A cold shock struck Adele as he recognized who it was. It was Nanny Cell, the legendary and strongest of the heroes ready to face them. The figure of Nanny Cell was a legendary adversary. Prepared for the trial, Adele reacted in shock, questioning the presence of such a prominent human hero. Renee asks if he recognizes him, and he only confirms it mentally. Nanny Cell is the head of the nanny house, directly connected to the protagonist. The connection is one of blood. A powerful lineage. He is the protagonist's father, the Sword Saint, founder of a house known for pure talent. Other candidates recognize him, outraged by the difficulty of the test. Adele notes that the warrior's fame is widespread, known for defeating demon houses. Eris explains that only 10% of his strength will be used in the test. Even with a fraction of the power, the challenge seems immense. Renee thinks 10% sounds low, but Adele replies that a monster is still a monster. He reflects on the impact of 10% strength and doubts the candidate's chances. He considers using an information item, but the cost and his limited resources make it unviable. Aries announces that they will form teams of 4, spreading out the top 8 performers from the previous test. Adele realizes he is among the top 8 and understands the privileged position he holds. Candidates look at Renee, others look at him, already used to being seen as lucky or special. A tap on the shoulder pulls him from his thoughts. Renee wishes him caution and safety in the next phase. Adele returns the wish, hoping for her success too. Harris announces that the team formations will be revealed. Adele is named as the leader of Team 33, alongside Kina, Chris, and Sanchez. Unfortunately, he doesn't know the teammates and questions their importance. Heading their way, he finds everyone present with a smile. He introduces himself to the new colleagues. Chris and Kina react with enthusiasm and waves. Sanchez responds in a colder tone, The router boy expresses indignation at the leadership. Offended by the leader's race, Adele feels frustrated recognizing the disdain, but ignores the provocation. He encourages the team to do their best. Receiving support from Kina and Chris. Taking the initiative, he asks them to share their abilities. Chris shapes energy into a prismatic form, useful for both defense and attack. He explains that he lacks power, but compensates with versatility. Approving the demonstration, Adele looks to the next one. Kina avoids direct combat that strengthens allies. She focuses and invokes a blessing that increases speed. She summons a visible orange energy. Panting, she asks if the leader feels the effect. Adele confirms and Kina complains about the dry answer. Smiling, he says he was joking and asks her not to take offense. He evaluates the ability as subtle, but valuable, and wonders how she passed the test. Focus shifts to Sanchez, serious and ready to show his strength. Begins transforming his body, gaining a rocky texture. He completes the transformation with stone armor. Adele identifies the defensive nature of the ability, recognizing its potential as the front line. After the demonstration, Sanchez challenges him, asking him to reveal his own skills. A small pulsating ring is thrown. In an instant, Adele appears next to Sanchez, leaving behind a trail of blue energy. Sanchez reacts with disbelief, shocked by the speed. With a confident smile and crimson eyes, Adele reveals his ability. Backing off, he confirms the technique used, demonstrating rapid displacement. Chris and Kina react with admiration, and he thanks them for the recognition. Despite the display, he holds back, avoiding revealing all his secrets. He then sets the positioning strategy, placing defense up front and support in the rear. He seeks confirmation from the team, receiving approval from Kina and Chris and a quiet nod from Sanchez. The second trial is announced. The preparation order echoes in the hall and Adele smiles, feeling the moment has come. Group 1 is called, stepping forward with determination and nervousness. Adele watches the candidates, noticing the courage in their eyes. Nanny Cell takes a combat stance, energy surrounding his blade. With speed, he attacks, finishing everyone in a single strike. Adele and Sanchez react with surprise at the power display. One candidate is hit by crimson energy, collapsing in agony. Adele tense, wonders if that is truly only 10% of his power. Instructor Aries calls the next group. Another candidate screams under attack, pain evident in his body. Group 3, including Kina, Chris, and Sanchez, reacts to the test harshness. Harris calls Group 4. Two members hesitate, visibly afraid, with trembling voices. They express the futility of trying. Eris stares at them silently before proceeding. He allows them to quit and asks the other two if they will continue. The remaining two, apprehensive, accept the challenge. Adele watches the scene with a thoughtful smile, realizing the true nature and brutal criteria of the trial. One teammate questions whether the quitters pass, and Adele confirms that they no longer need to take the test. Instructor Aries announces that Group 4 will begin their trial against the legendary figure. Adele watches, aware that two people won't be enough, and continues to evaluate. In seconds, the candidates are thrown back by the impact. Another screams, hit by a power that would have annihilated him if it were full force. Chris questions whether such a monster can be defeated, and Sanchez scoffs at the hesitation in facing a mortal. Adele notices the tension in Sanchez. Despite his confident words, other groups faced the challenge, and Aries called Group 5. The Sword Saint continued, and the instructor called Group 9. When Group 10 was called, a candidate immediately quit, surprising Adele as the calls continued. Group 20 prepared themselves. Group 30 came, and Adele noticed 5 withdrawals and no victories. He reflected on the test, understanding it was a fight against the impossible, with the option to surrender. His strikes echoed with energy, and a candidate blocked one of them. Adele noticed the fights were lasting longer. He realized the test demanded persistence, not victory. Sanchez commented that their turn was coming soon. Visibly tense, Adele, eyes gleaming, said he had discovered the secret to passing, and Sanchez reacted with curiosity. Adele explained that the key was to endure until the end, even without a chance of victory. He based his conclusion on the instructor's reactions and the opponent's controlled strength. Sanchez tried to interrupt, but Adele proposed something bold. Instructor Aries announced next. Group 33. Adele, confident, suggested trying to defeat the Sword Saint. Sanchez reacted with disbelief, while Chris and Kina accepted the idea with enthusiasm. He believed he could win with his talent, challenging the view held about his race. The team got into position, activating their abilities in sync. The Sword Saint watched them, not recognizing the leader, wondering what the next move would be. Adele instructed the team to stay calm and hold their positions. Chris and Sanchez confirmed, one ready and the other hesitant. Nene Cell launched the attack, moving with precision and restrained power. Haddle shouted an urgent warning that he was coming. The Saint attacked with a powerful strike, the blade slicing through the air. Chris panicked, activated his defense, a prism of energy manifesting. Adele reacted quickly, ordering Kina to protect Chris, and called out to Sanchez. Kina advanced, determined to soften the blow on her teammate. The team leader directed Sanchez, whose rocky transformation confirmed his readiness. The legendary force descended, blasting the first candidates to the ground. With a devastating surge of blue energy, Sanchez took the initial impact of the energy wave, his rocky form straining under the force of the blow. With visible effort he endured, and Adele encouraged him, recognizing his tenacity and withstanding the attack. He observed the opponent, noting an apparent opening before the next move, but hesitated. The sword master's figure remained shrouded in aura. The opening looked far too obvious. A deep instinct held him back, questioning internally if the legendary warrior was setting a trap. Urgently he warned the team about the second attack, reinforcing the order to hold their positions. Chris's defense gave out, the prismatic shield shattering under the continuous force. The team leader realized the critical situation. Chris at his limit, Sanchez taking damage. Reflecting on the destruction from a single strike, Adele grasped the severity, and pleaded with his teammates to hold on just a bit longer. The Sword Saint prepared for the second strike. Tension was clear on his face. The second attack came at full power. A devastating wave struck the team. Sanchez staggered, feeling the surge in intensity. Amid the pressure, Sanchez screamed in desperation, and Adele urged him to endure a moment more. He reflected on the absurdity of the situation. His team was the only one to block the initial attack. The legendary figure held an imposing stance, concentrating blue aura for the next offensive. The sword master lowered his blade, the energy around him intensifying, signaling imminent power. Haddle was focused, ready for the decisive moment. Chris was down while Kina tried to help him recover. Haddle approached, asking about Chris's condition, who was still affected by the attack. He asked his teammate to trust him once more. Sanchez shouted warning of the incoming strike, pressuring Adele to back Chris. Struggling, asked if Adele had a plan. He responded with confident affirmation. A dark smile crossed his face as he stated he would definitely land a hit with his dagger. Tina and Chris reacted in shock, feeling the energy emanating from him. The Sword Saint gathered even more, blue aura expanding for another devastating strike. Sanchez screamed, calling for Chris as the blow approached. With a subtle smile, Adele said he would face the attack alone, leaving him confused. The legendary figure attacked, becoming a blur of energy. Sanchez was struck directly. Pain etched across his face. His body was launched into the air, flying across the arena. Adele watched and then used his position-swapping technique. He appeared in an unexpected strategic point above the enemy. From above, he saw the opponent preparing to use his skill again. The target was clear, the legendary weapon highlighted by visual overlay. The sword rose and Adele closed in with his dagger ready. Surprise crossed the Sword Saint's face upon realizing he'd been flanked. With a relentless smile, Adele knew the moment to defeat him had come. Adele finishes his movement, about to strike with his dagger. Ayres watches the battle closely. Renee shows no reaction, merely observing in silence. A red light appears during the clash. His strike is stopped by a counterattack from the Sword Saint. Blood drips to the ground during the confrontation. Despite the pain, he continues, only needing a single moment. He soon activates the darkness trait, enveloping them both in shadows. The darkness isolates the space and blocks outside vision. Adele keeps the enemy trapped in the dark domain. The opponent finds himself surrounded by total darkness. Holding his dagger, he prepares his technique. Within the domain in front of him stood the motionless saint. But soon a full silhouette reveals itself before him. Rushing toward him, Adele states that the enemy fell into the trap. Seeing no better opportunity, he spreads his arms with his eye glowing intensely. He knows the time is now behind the sword saint. A small dagger appears extending his hand. He conjures several more satisfied. He knows he has trapped the sword saint. Numerous other daggers appear within the darkness. Clenching his fist, he activates the final technique. Rain of black blades. The attack hits the sword saint directly. The darkness pulses and stirs violently while others watch. Seeing this, Chris wonders what is happening. Ares, observing, realizes the battle is already over. The purple energy begins to dissipate. Adele emerges from the darkness. The enemy lies defeated as the boy simply stares at his body. Other students look on, not understanding anything. Then the environment returns to normal. Smiling, he declares victory. Another boy says, "That was fun to watch." His allies approach, calling his name. Chris asks how he did that, and he replies it was thanks to teamwork. Curious, she asks what happened to the other one, and she informs him that Sanchez is recovering. Relieved, he holds his small dagger in his hands. Approaching the body, he asks if they should finish. His companions react, questioning if the fight wasn't already over. A movement on the ground indicates the opponent is still conscious. One of the allies asks what he intends to do. He suggests that maybe it's better to make sure the enemy doesn't get up again. Ares watches in silence with arms crossed. A girl watches the scene with a smile. Sitting on top of her companions, she declares that for a half-demon, he's not that bad. Her ally makes a cold comment about Adele, saying he's not as good as her. Observing him from afar, she notices his nature has not yet been revealed. She simply states he's a stupid and vulgar guy. Suddenly hearing that, Renee appears curious, sensing her presence. The girl tries to figure out who she is. The girl recognizes that she's part of the bear's family, but doesn't understand why she's staring. Tension grows between them. Onlookers comment on an imminent confrontation. Her companions position themselves on her side. Looking back, Adele notices a commotion. Putting away his dagger, he wonders why Renee is radiating killing intent. Someone calls out the name Pixie Adele, which is quite unusual. Ares finds himself before the protagonist. He turns and responds with a smile, asking the reason for the approach. Ares asks if he truly doesn't know. Adele insists that he doesn't. Walking away, Ares warns that he'll be watching him from now on. Adele notes the lack of recognition, and decides to keep an eye on Renee. Meanwhile, near the entrance, Renee faces the other girl passing between students. She wonders if they're still on this curious. He wonders who the other girl is. She is identified as Laurel Fran from the House of Lust. Adele wonders why these two figures are about to fight. Laura looks to the side and reacts, surprised by the protagonist's presence. Even from a considerable distance, she calls out to the half-demon. She simply commands him to become her slave. Hearing this, Renee becomes furious. She leaps and attacks with her sword, aiming directly at the girl. Laurel is surprised by Renee's initiative. Unwilling to let it slide, she asks if Renee is insane. Ares appears imposing, ordering them to stop. He continues, saying fights are forbidden. He demands they take the conflict elsewhere. Seeing the scene, Adele feels relieved that the teacher stopped a fight between members of the 7 deadly sins. Renee withdraws her blade with disdain. Laurel glares at her in irritation. At all worried, asks if she's okay. She already warns that the next group is hers. Soon she approaches without saying a word. Leaving him surprised, a touch lands on his face. Leaving him stunned as she wipes his face, she says he did a good job. Laurel reacts in shock, questioning the relationship between the two. Adele smiles, grateful for the kindness. After the success, he reveals that he had hidden his power. Renee shows surprise upon hearing the call for Group 34. As she walks away, she says she will keep his secret. Adele reflects on the mistaken perception of his strength and family status behind him. Someone asks him to identify himself. Laurel stares at him. He responds calmly, saying his name is Adele. She approves of the name. He asks why he was approached. Smiling darkly, she says it's because of the earlier interruption. With a dark aura, she makes a disrespectful offer. Her eyes shine intensely as she declares she will have him, and threatens Renee. Adele politely refuses, saying that now is his master's moment. He smiles, curious about Renee's strength. While the other girl reacts with fury, she is surrounded by her group, curious to see how strong the children of the 7 deadly sins really are. Confrontation begins, with the girl facing the figure of the Sword Saint. Watching, she comments on the intensity and how amazing she was. A firm step echoes, marking the approach. She advances with determination, accompanied by her group. Another girl and her companion react in surprise. A boy laughs with a friend, finding the move amusing. Adele is surprised to see her approaching the powerful figure. Renee stares at the beastly aura-clad figure. Maintaining her resolve, the Sword Saint's gaze meets hers. Renee faces her opponent with strong aura. The battle is about to begin. Both reveal the intensity of the clash. Blades collide and break in the process. Ada watches in surprise along with another student. In a matter of seconds, she wins the battle against the Sword Saint. Cries of surprise erupt among the observers. Iris evaluates the performance as reasonable. While she is praised, Adele is stunned by the ease of her victory. He realizes the projection didn't attack, because she had already been evaluated. Laurel laments not having seen Renee humiliated, but admits the strength it required. Curious, he asks if the union of the children of the 7 sins would surpass the swordsman. She denies it, but acknowledges the individual potential of the young ones. Laurel counters, saying the projection doesn't represent even 10% of the real power. The simulated figure dissipates into smoke, and he reflects on the demon realm. Despite his doubts, a spark of interest lights in his eyes. A new group is called Leaving Only the Children of the 7 Sins. Other groups win one, celebrating with ease. Demonstrated strength was so great that it overshadowed their differences. He feels he already knows who the 2 strongest are. Eris announces the end of the exams and asks them to gather. He reveals that all who fought passed, while the others observed the quitters. Eris congratulates the approved candidates, declaring them apprentices of Satan. He also warns of the difficult journey ahead, and the need for determination. He summons the approved for the ceremony in 2 days. He asks the aide who overcame the projection to stay where they are. She asks why. Adele suggests it might be the arsenal reward. The instructor confirms they will have access to the arsenal. Bolton raises his hand and asks a direct question with a hopeful smile. He wants to know if they can take many weapons. Adele recognizes the young man as the son of envy and ambitious. The instructor replies that only 1 weapon will be allowed. With no more delay, he asks them to follow him to the arsenal. He touches the wall with an intentional gesture. A magical symbol glows blue. The door opens, illuminating the room. They receive Satan's reward, and are informed that the choice made there will decide their destinies. In front of the portal, a smile forms as he senses unexpected challenges ahead. Ayres instructs the group, informing them about reverse order and final inspection. The joy of the first contrasts with the surprise of the one who was last. The impatient one steps forward loudly, and the teacher tells him to go. Already Renee and Adele discuss whether to choose weapons or artifacts. Before entering, Adele fears the options will be gone by the time it's his turn. The door opens again, calling the next in line. The first returns with euphoria, showing off the glowing artifact. Watching the repeated choices, Adele considers changing his strategy. Renee alerted him that it was his turn. Curious, he asks about the bracelet she chose and its hidden capabilities. She replies that its secrets only reveal themselves inside the place. She adds that there are rules, but mentions that some items have no descriptions. This makes him reflect on the obscure nature of certain artifacts. He wonders if label-less items might still have great value. He concludes that the mystery could hide something important, not insignificant. Before he can think more, he is pulled back to reality. The silence and fixed stares announce his approach to the decisive moment. The authority notices his hesitation and encourages him to speak up. He finally asks about the unidentified objects. The response confirms that such items carry unknown origins and powers. It's explained that they are risky, possibly blessings or curses. Without further delay, they point to the entrance, urging him to decide quickly. He smiles, wondering if coming in last place could be a good omen. With a firm step, he crosses the portal. Inside, the environment surprises him with its order. Despite the latent tension, a strong light indicates the path to follow. Within the enigmatic interior, he moves forward and sees artifacts inside, floating ethereal casings. A magnificent blade impresses him with its beauty and restrained power. Next, an unusual spear catches his attention because of its design. The spear's history speaks of hunts and reptilian spirit power. Even though it's grand, the weapon doesn't align with his skills. The next artifact is an orb that holds starlight and an ancient legacy. Despite its glow, he dismisses it for being incompatible with his element. A pedestal displays an empty container, sparking curiosity. The missing piece was a diadem of vital energy and extreme resilience. He closes his eyes, remembering how artifacts conceal one's fate. Ironically, he now faces what he once wanted to avoid: chains with a sharp gaze. He suspects the greatest treasures have already been taken. An empty box, once guardian of an item called the Serpent, confirms his suspicion other displays were also empty, marked by the absence of ancient treasures. He mourns silently, feeling the weight of reality. As hope of finding something valuable fades, a resigned smile appears as he imagines who took the best items, and what is left. His eyes lock onto a blue blade that still remains protected. Catching his interest, aware of the risk, he decides he must choose it, given the few options left. A flash of insight makes him think of a way to bypass the artifact's dangers. He writes down a plan, balancing his lack of gold with the urgency of the situation. Kneeling, he asks about the blade and its essence, knowing the answer will come at a cost. He learns that the cost is high: a valuable relic or a large sum of gold for the information. He reflects for a moment, surprised by the item's value system. He turns to another mystery, a scroll whose price is lower. He smiles as he realizes that the price of the information reflects the power of the item. He decides to examine all 7 boxes and find which one hides the greatest treasure. He starts with a stone shaped like an eagle, whose secret costs very little. Relieved, he concludes it probably isn't worth much. He discovers that it swaps the user's fate with someone else's. Shocked by the revelation, he hurries onward. The prices form a clear scale among the remaining objects. He sighs, frustrated with the choices still left. Only 2 items still hold promise, and his hope weakens. One of them reveals a legendary fragment of remarkable value. Excited, he feels he's found something better than what the others took. He touches the object and is surprised by an unexpected physical reaction. The box rises with a glowing mystical aura. A strange sensation warns him that he is being watched. His eyes turn to the last item, a necklace forgotten on a pedestal. He tries to understand the sensation and decides to investigate the necklace. As he asks about it, a glowing energy begins to surround him. Suddenly, a greenish aura emerges, revealing the answer: necklaces. Light shines brightly and shows an extreme condition for exchange. Faced with the outrageous demand, he smiles wryly, recognizing the item's legendary reputation. Before the object, Adele feels relief in realizing that there is still hope. Surprised, he holds a floating paper, paying close attention to every detail. Cautious, he thinks it's too early to celebrate. Unsure who to offer the gift to, the glowing necklace in the cube stirs his curiosity about what it truly is. He extends his hand to test it, and a dark energy responds to the touch. He pulls back, observing the necklace in silence. Intrigued, sitting down, he crosses his arms. Frustrated at not understanding the artifact's purpose, he decides to try another approach, asking directly about the necklace and its god. The answer doesn't change. It still says only offer to a god. Discouraged, he considers giving up. Seeing no way forward, curious, he has no other idea but to see for himself. With a necklace around his neck, he smiles, feeling it's something far beyond ordinary. The cube now displays a screen, and he activates the status with a gesture. He reads his information and, satisfied, confirms his suspicions in the empty room. He thinks he has time to explore hidden secrets. Ares appears, looking serious at the necklace Adele is wearing. While explaining, Adele states the necklace has no description, but Ares is suspicious, smiling. He assures him he knows nothing, Aries keeps his gaze steady and Adele notices the hidden contempt. Despite this, the instructor decides to trust him. Fulfilling his duty as a teacher in front of the cadets, he instructs them to treat the artifacts as if they were their lives. Adele looks at his peers, predicting that many will go on to lead the demon world alone. He wonders if he too will have the support to go that far. Aries ends the session scheduling the next meeting. With Renee by his side, he suggests returning to the dormitory, and she promptly agrees. A tap on his shoulder surprises him as someone firmly calls out to him. Bolton, smiling, asks if he had been rude earlier, surprising Adele with his name. He introduced himself and praised his fight with enthusiasm. Returning the gesture, he was glad to see Bolton take the initiative. Suddenly he felt pain and discomfort. Bolton was crushing his hand with brutal strength, eyes glowing, fingers cracking, sweating and holding back anger. Adele couldn't understand the sudden attitude. Seeing the cruel smile, he concluded that Bolton only respected the strong and despised the weak. Then he remembered when the boy, consumed by bloodlust, spared him after nearly killing him. Recognizing his potential, Bolton asked if he was okay. He said no, but inside he questioned why he had been chosen. The sword shown as a message indicated the use of a position-switching skill. Adele appeared behind him, touching his shoulder and leaving him confused with his injured hand. He begged him to stop, reminding him the test was over and everyone was exhausted. Bolton laughed loudly while he looked away, embarrassed by the situation. With glowing eyes, the boy stated that he was strong and wanted to fight to the death. Right there, horrified, he called him insane and refused any combat. Renee stepped between them firm, demanding they stop immediately. With a piercing gaze, she declared that if he wanted to fight Adele, he'd have to face her too. A wave of energy interrupted them in the distance. Renee held her gleaming sword. Tension eased, and Bolton admitted that facing both of them was too much. Before class, with a confident smile, he said goodbye, promising more chances ahead. Adele, confused, saw contradiction in sparing someone, yet creating deadly fights, calling him a psychopath as Bolton walked away with his sword in hand. He wondered when he had drawn it. Renee calm called him to leave. He smiled and agreed, excited about what awaited him in Satan. The scene shifted to a house under a sunny sky. Adele relaxed inside, feeling renewed after everything he'd been through. As he stretched, he sensed a different energy and realized he was stronger. In front of the mirror, he observed his physical progress with satisfaction. He picked up the Satan uniform, impressed that they had sent it directly. As he put on the jacket, he was surprised by the unexpected comfort. Fully dressed, he remembered the rule to wear it for years, but found it practical enough. He smiled, imagining how Renee looked in the uniform, and decided to see for himself. He knocked softly on the door. A voice asked who it was. He identified himself and offered help. The door opened with an invitation to come in. Renee, dressed in the uniform, fixed her hair under the sunlight. He watched her silently for a moment, smiling. He told her she looked beautiful. Embarrassed, she touched her face and blushed, finding her reaction adorable. He asked if she was going out, and mentioned wanting to stroll during the break. Before turning to leave, he wished her a good rest and said goodbye. But he paused briefly when she called out to him. Renee stopped him from leaving, and said there was something that needed to be done. Surprised, he asked her to repeat it. She looked at him seriously and restated the question. As he heard it, he tried to remember what he had forgotten. The word guard came to him, triggering a flash of understanding. He realized he needed to protect her. She offered to go with him, asking for a moment to change clothes. Still embarrassed, she asked how long he planned to keep staring. He replied he'd wait outside. Outside, he smiled ironically and lamented the lost day off. The scene shifted to a bustling street with vibrant architecture. Passing by a stall, he noticed how clean the city was. Surprising after 10 years of war, he reflected that although reconstruction was ongoing nearby, the capital didn't seem human-dominated. Renee gently touched his arm, getting his attention. She pointed to a stall and suggested they eat there. He smiled and asked if she wanted street food. Skewers sizzled on the grill under intense heat. He asked the vendor what was being cooked, and heard it was venison with vegetables. Wondering if it was like chicken, he decided to order two. He soon took a bite and let out a sound of satisfaction. Adele asked if it was good, and she replied between bites that it was delicious. He watched her, seeing her so expressive, and found it curious to see someone usually reserved act that way. The scene revealed a square, with a central fountain and charming buildings. The two walked among the crowd, immersed in the local life. He reflected that he hadn't rested in ages, and maybe this was his last chance. They stopped in front of a large stone statue at the center of the square. He looked and wondered who it represented. He asked Renee, who replied, surprised that it was the first Demon King. Looking more closely, he noticed similarities with Diana. With a slight smile, he suggested getting closer to see better. Suddenly, the statue's eyes glowed with energy. Adele was enveloped by a green light from the necklace, and reacted in confusion, shocked. He watches the necklace glowing intensely. The energy forms an imposing figure above him, connected to the artifact. He holds the necklace, frightened by the pulsing light. He notices one of the gems has turned gray and is surprised. With sweat on his face, he looks at Renee, who asks why he grabbed the artifact so suddenly. He averts his eyes to the statue, and says he saw light and the necklace's color change. He examines the necklace again, thoughtful as she watches him. When he looks at her, he realizes he was the only one who saw it. The statue dominates the scene, as he reflects on what he discovered. He touches the necklace with a determined smile, certain it's connected to the Demon King. He suggests they return, and Renee agrees, while curiosity builds inside him. The next morning, the construction of Satan appears beneath the clear sky. They walk toward the site, and he reminds her that the ceremony is about to begin. Inside the auditorium, the director and instructors occupy the stage. Around 100 students are seated, and Adele observes the typical entrance ceremony. Two students comment in disbelief that the director is a child, and Adele remembers how she crushed them with her presence alone. With a subtle smile, he denies it when they say she's cute. The director, tattooed and masked, points at him and questions his eyes. His eyes glow a deep red, radiating an aura that locks onto him with intensity. He feels an internal impact, while another student also reacts in alarm. He forces a smile and says she's adorable, shocked to realize she can read minds. Instructor Aries silences the crowd with a shout, starting the ceremony as the sign indicates. The tension eases and the director's speech nears its end, emphasizing the importance of Satan's rules. The professor concludes with a smile, and calls the top cadet and runner-up to the stage for the oath. Walton and the runner-up walk to the stage under watchful eyes. Adele acknowledges that both deserve their positions, and notices Renee standing indifferently beside him. He smiles, thinking she only wants revenge, and decides to focus on his mission. Suddenly, a surge of energy surprises him. A fist is pointed firmly forward. Bolton smiles provocatively, and he reacts with anger. Upon seeing him again, he tries to calm down and decides to ignore him. To maintain his composure, a voice calls the top cadet to the center and a step echoes. Diana appears with a radiant aura, crossing the hall surprised. He recognizes her divine strength and her merit as top cadet. Before everyone, Diana makes a solemn oath on behalf of those accepted into Satan. She promises to rebuild the demon kingdom and carry the shame, shifting the atmosphere of the room. With his hand on his neck, Adele feels the weight of guilt, and fears his origin might be discovered. He imagines in a nightmare being tortured eternally in a dark pit. The ceremony ends, revealing the grand auditorium. Aries announces that they should check the board to find their classes, and proceed to the rooms smiling. Adele invites Renee to check the board, and she agrees. The students crowd around the list for classes A, B, and C. Adele sees his name in class A and wonders about Renee. He smiles, thinking someone got unlucky, says she's in class C, admits he didn't want them to be separated, and she tells him to stop smiling. Renee turns and says he's still her guard and must appear when called. He replies that he will. He smiles with relief, thinking he might relax a bit. But someone taps him on the shoulder from behind. As he turns, he finds a serious-looking student and stares at him, surprised, with glowing eyes and furious. The student asks if he wants to die, calling him a bastard with a Cerberus face. Adele reacts in shock, recognizing who he is. Samuel, son of Verus from the Gluttony family, appears with glowing eyes and a strong aura. The protagonist apologizes, thinks Samuel wants trouble, and decides to ignore it since it's the first day. Angrily, Samuel tells him to disappear and says he just got lucky. Adele wonders why the children of the seven sins are always like this, and if Bolton is also in Class A. The Academy's imposing facade shines under the sun. In a room, someone slams the table and asks if the other doubts him. During the meeting, Idea insists that she is now a legitimate instructor at Satan. Eris says the child is dangerous and needs to be watched. Idea protests, saying the students are her responsibility and that he is overstepping. The director tells Idea to calm down and sit. She obeys, frustrated in thinking about her constant underestimation. The director asks Eris why he wants to switch classes. He says he wants to personally watch over Adal, since he knows his type well. He says the boy was born to kill, and could betray his allies at any moment. Another instructor questions if they're not overreacting to a half-demon, while the other says he's weaker than the children of the sins. Ares insists that strength isn't just about power. The others listen in silence. Ares continues, saying that Adele's boldness and cold demeanor make him dangerous. Idea explodes, accusing Ares of simply not trusting her. The director sighs while the two are still arguing with intense aura. She commands the discussion to end. All the instructors fall silent. She tells Ares that she understands his concern, but states that changing classes now would cause more problems. Ares agrees but asks for caution. She instructs Idea to keep a close watch on Adele. Idea agrees with a smile and a sparkle in her eyes. The meeting ends and the instructors are sent to their classes. A sign marks the door of room 1A. The protagonist, enveloped in light, laments his bad luck. Laurel appears smiling, and he thinks that at least it's not Diana with a grin. He also thinks it's not Bolton either. Laurel approaches asking if he followed her, and he says it was just luck. She laughs exaggeratedly and says he'll be her slave there. Thinks this is starting again. Laurel looks at him, drawing attention. He threatens anyone who keeps talking. Adele watches the two, thinking they might get along well. A loud sound breaks the tension in the room. Idea enters and all the students turn to look. She faces the class loudly, asking if the chaos has already started on the first day. Adele observes the instructor, curious about who she is. The instructor claps her hands strongly and welcomes everyone, smiling. She introduces herself as the one in charge of Class A, and asks them to remember her name. She declares herself a senior known as the Calamity Legion, though she questions the title in her thoughts. Students react in shock, recalling the massacre at the Pollux River. Doubting the death count, Adele, smiling, thinks that having a strong instructor like that improves his chances of survival. Idea ends the introduction and begins explaining how the classes will work. She writes hunting method on the board, announcing the subject of the lesson. She continues, saying they won't be hunting animals or demonic beasts. Another student asks what the target of the hunts will be. Calmly, Idea reveals that the goal will be to hunt humans. Adele smiles, thinking now things are really starting. Idea explains she will teach the hunting methods, while magic and weapons will be covered by other instructors. She will also be responsible for endurance training, which discourages him since it's his weakness. Soon she announces the beginning of the first class, and sends everyone to the training field. The scene shifts to the open sky with clouds and bright sunlight. Adele walks toward the field, observing the scenery along the way. Upon arrival, he's impressed by the size of the place, and wonders if it will be used for weapons or magic. Idea asks if everyone is present. She creates a portal of dark energy, and asks them to keep their eyes fixed on it. Gesturing, she stands beside the portal as it pulses strongly from within. Legs clad in heavy armor emerge. Figures in full armor come out of the portal. Adele and another student react with alarm to the appearance. Idea smiles and explains that they're just illusions, created by her magic, touching the face of one illusion. She mentions that she created the Sword Saint during the entrance exam. Adele is shocked, thinking she's a monster for making a clone, with nearly a tenth of the original's power. Sweating, he concludes that the Royal Academy is far scarier than Satan. Idea says the task is simple. Pass through the illusions and reach her, then asks who wants to try. She shows a determined look. Then she calls Adele by name, catching him by surprise. He becomes uneasy at being challenged directly, and hears her tell him to try hitting her throat. With a provocative smile, she says he should repeat what he did to the sword. Saint Adele watches the instructor, thinking he has now caught her attention too. Forcing a smile, he asks if he'll be facing the instructor directly. She appears among the illusions and explains that humans have a leader whose fall weakens the group. She says she will lead the illusions, as if she were the humans' commander. Atel draws his dagger, understanding he must bring down the leader as the art of war teaches. Confident, he thinks defeating her will be easy. Idea says that if he can touch her, he'll pass with illusions all around. She gives the command to begin. Adele uses position transfer and appears behind her surprise. Idea widens her eyes at his speed. Adele asks if that counts as passing. Leaving her speechless, he looks at the distance he covered, surprised by his progress. Surrounded by energy, he reflects on his growth and power. A blue aura glows at Idea's neck. She comments, surprised that she now understands the warnings about Adele. She makes a gesture and says he passed. He responds affirmatively. As he puts the weapon away, he wonders if she was being hostile or just curious. Idea addresses the students and warns that those who fail will have extra lessons, and the rest react. The sky appears covered with clouds. A student attacks an illusion, shouting against the humans. Adele watches, thinking the demons do the basics well, but only defeat a few. Idea appears connected to the illusions, showing the danger if she fought directly. The attacking student is surrounded by spears. Left in shock, Adele thinks that must have hurt. Another student leaps forward with knives, wanting to charge past everyone. The illusions of bows fire arrows into the air. He smiles strangely while others are surprised. The student falls covered in arrows, making him appreciate his own movement skills. Idea, smiling with arms crossed, calls the next cadet. A student arrives, telling everyone to move out of the way. Adele sees Samuel and wonders if his arrogance matches his strength. Samuel appears with a green aura, announcing the start of the test. The protagonist observes tensely. Slightly sweating, Samuel enters the field with a pulsing aura. The green energy rises, showing he's ready. Samuel raises his hands, surrounded by a vortex of energy. Adele braces himself, leaving trails due to the speed of the attacks. Shocked to realize everything was destroyed in an instant. Concluding its magic, Samuel remains among the debris, revealing his ability Gluttony, which devours everything. Smiling, he acknowledges the boy's power and accepts letting him stay in first. For now, Samuel surveys the field, thoughtful and tired, clearing the smoke. He's intrigued by something unusual among the group. He stands firm among the debris, confident with a hand on his hip. Hadel observes calmly, recognizing that an instructor wouldn't fall that easily. Idea tells Samuel he destroyed everything except her, and that for a moment she was impressed. She smiles and points at him, stating that unfortunately he failed. Samuel reacts confused, questioning the decision with a gesture. Idea signals that she will explain. Smiling, she reveals illusions with glowing eyes appearing behind her. She explains that without eliminating the leader, humans always find a replacement. As the illusions demonstrate, Adele is surprised by the number, estimating at least 200, surrounded by blue magic. Idea acknowledges Samuel's power, remarkable for a freshman. His fist clenches in frustration as he watches her. Discreetly, Idea calls the next cadet, already irritating the boy. Adele notes that despite the frustration, he is accepting the result. Samuel stares at Adele with tension, and he returns a slight smile. He walks past him, clearly showing his displeasure. Protagonist comments that he failed for trusting too much in himself. As the instructor stands among the illusions, he concludes Samuel would have passed if he had focused on her. He notices someone behind him, saying they were expecting this. Oral appears with hands on her hips and a confident smile, saying it's her turn now. Others recognize her as front of the 7 deadly sins, and Adele wonders how she will do. Arrogantly, Laurel challenges the illusions to try and stop her. She laughs while being watched by the other students. Suddenly, she seems nervous, sweating and frozen, not understanding what happened. She panics, not knowing how to act. Adele concludes that, as expected from the child of lust, she doesn't fight directly, surrounded by grotesque minions. He explains that she relies on them like a queen relies on her bees. Desperate, Laurel thinks she needs to act. Her eyes widen as she realizes something. She looks back and sees Adele crying and terrified. She begs for help, calling him her slave. He only smiles slightly as the other students watch the scene confused. He just hears her calling him slave. While the other students react in surprise, he gets irritated, trying to understand what she intends by saying that. While begging for help, Instructor Idea watches calmly and points to the target with her hand. Laurel tries to run away desperately, but the illusions surround her. Adele suspects she can't use reinforcement magic on herself. He smiles, thinking there must be a reason behind that limitation. While she keeps screaming, turning his gaze, he notices a green energy manifesting. Meanwhile, a pink-haired girl is healing another student's injury. A bright glow covers the wounded student's leg. Shown healing is in progress at that spot. He's surprised to see her using a power that only humans can use, which means this girl must be a half-demon, making him wonder how someone so rare is in the same class. Not knowing her name, he at least knows he needs to make contact before he can go to her. Instructor calls his name, asking him to help the girl, who was previously begging for help. Looking back, he knows now is not the right time. Trying to wake up, Laurel starts flicking her own forehead. She clearly doesn't like what he's doing and still calls him useless. Getting ready to accept her again, he tells her to get up since the battle is over. Crying like a child, she asks if he saw everything, leaving him confused about what she was talking about. Telling him not to be an idiot, he only replies that she just seemed weaker than a slave. Clapping her hands, the teacher orders them to clean up and gather. With everyone gathered, she says it was as she expected and that they all did a good job. She continues by saying it's important to experience things like this, where there's a sense of knowing where they are, where they can make plenty of mistakes. By knowing their limits, they can allow themselves to lean on one another, so they can work perfectly together in battle. While listening, it all thinks that, at the Human Imperial School, students are divided based on ability. Unlike Satan, Idea calls for the only one who passed the test. With glowing eyes, she says she'll be waiting for his progress. Feeling the pressure from the other students, he says he'll do his best to learn everything. They are then ordered to return to class for the next lesson. Feeling the pressure, he wonders if she wasn't being a bit hostile. Adele questions whether he should start a fight and become a slave, and whether it's possible to form his own faction in this place. The scene shifts to Satan's school. After class, the teacher continued with lessons, until a new instructor introduced himself, saying he would be in charge of theoretical teaching. In the lesson, he learned about the history of the demon kingdom and human weaknesses, while explaining the structures identical to those of humans. The protagonist wonders if it would hurt the same if hit there. Finishing the class, the instructor states that next time, there will be a quiz on today's material, and to avoid remedial classes, they must memorize everything. The book is closed with a sigh of relief. He lays on the desk and thinks, it's the same method used in his old school. Even though it was his first day, he already felt defeated. Meanwhile, the students were already getting to know each other, crying. He thinks he's alone just like before without friends, but something catches his attention. He notices that same girl who was using human healing powers. Standing up, he thinks now is the time to talk to her, so he walks over to her desk. In his presence, she notices him. He introduces himself as Adele and says it's a pleasure to meet her. All the students stop what they were doing to witness the scene, which makes him wonder why everyone is staring at them. Embarrassed, she says, it's a pleasure too. That makes him think that whenever two half-demons do anything, and he realizes she's uncomfortable and should leave the conversation for later. He says goodbye to the girl, who replies with a simple goodbye. As he walks away, he thinks about going to the bathroom to recharge his loneliness mana. On the way, he runs into Samuel near a door. They stare at each other, both uncomfortable with the encounter. Samuel appears irritated, asking if it's him again. Adele, smiling, says he was already leaving. Samuel insults him, calling him a disgusting creature. That also irritates him. He reacts with sarcasm, suggesting that his family must be wonderful. Samuel, surrounded by green aura, becomes furious at the provocation. He further insults him, saying something had to be truly rotten to create walking, talking trash like him, clenching his teeth. The boy doesn't want to let it go. More intensely, he says he's going to destroy him and leave him in pieces. Adele senses the hostility and thinks that if Samuel is an obstacle, he must be eliminated. Something like a thorn appears in front of him with blue aura. He considers ripping off Samuel's arm with magic. That makes him think that if he used magic, he might be able to take an arm without anyone caring. But before the attack, the two are interrupted by someone. The instructor appears between them, smiling and telling them to sit down. Samuel backs off a little. Meanwhile, Adele wonders how the instructor appeared so quickly. Samuel activates his green aura, ready to act holding a knife. He suspects the instructor has unlocked both his and Samuel's powers. The instructor smiles, adjusts his glasses, and asks everyone to return to their seats. Samuel walks away while Adele watches, impressed by the instructor's ease. The girl sees Samuel returning to his seat. Instructor Robolt introduces himself and says he'll be teaching magic. Adele smiles, thinking, it's natural that someone from Satan would be such a skilled instructor. An image shows someone writing, while reflecting on how magic isn't a talent, but a skill sitting. He thinks that maybe magic is more academic than it seems. The instructor explains that to learn magic, they need to understand the attributes. He lists earth, water, wind, fire, darkness, and light as the 6 attributes. Adele thinks most people have 1 attribute, but he might have 2. He reflects that the Bears family has darkness, but he's unsure about the Arson family. Robolt explains that today they will discover each person's attribute, shows a purple orb, and instructs them to place their hand on it to reveal the attribute. He asks them to form a line, while Adele decides to go last and observe. Akita places his hand on the orb, which glows red. Robert announces that he has the fire attribute. He explains that green indicates wind and calls the next student. He mentions earth and continues with the line. Adele is surprised to realize it's his turn. The instructor smiles and calls the next for the test. Adele replies, surprised the instructor knows his name. Robolt asks him to place his hand on the orb. Adele extends his hand and touches the orb, which glows intensely. He wonders what the color is, as Robolt watches closely, adjusting his glasses. He describes the rare color, half black and half something else. Adele asks what attribute gray represents, and he explains that black means darkness, common among demons, but gray is rare. Still curious, he asks if the instructor knows what it is. He confirms, but he's surprised. He reveals that gray means chaos, a magic that defies natural order. Curious, the protagonist asks if such magic really exists. Smiling, he admits he knows little. He accepts that, intrigued by never having heard of this attribute, but he reflects that magic that defies order might be the key, yet chooses to focus on darkness. The scene shows the academy illuminated. Back in the classroom, Adele thinks about the gray attribute. While thinking, he doesn't notice someone approaching with glowing eyes. Laurel surprises him, and he asks what she's doing behind him. She's surprised he detected her stealth technique. Adele, confused, asks if it's a stealth technique. Laurel, thoughtful, says that's not the point, leaving him even more confused. She leans in and asks with a challenging look what he was thinking about, with another question. He wants to know what she means, but she quickly tells him to stop pretending to be dumb. She looks at Samuel and implies Adele provoked him. He admits he couldn't stand being provoked, and she's surprised, annoyed. Laurel reminds him he just messed with Samuel's family. He calmly replies that outside forces don't enter Satan, so it doesn't matter. Laurel retorts, that's not the point. She asks if he really doesn't understand. She explains that it's not just rivalry between demons, but about Samuel's family. Crossing her arms, she sighs, frustrated. She says she's going back and asks him to be careful, thoughtful. He wonders if that was a warning about Samuel's family. He decides to focus since it's the last class, and watches to see who the instructor will be. A hand slams hard on the desk. Instructor Aries calls them weaklings, saying normally they wouldn't even deserve to be there. He reminds them that except for the top 8, everyone was destroyed by a weak dummy, and asks if he's wrong. Adele thinks the instructor is wounding their pride right from the start. Ares explains he will teach swordsmanship so that even in death, they take at least the enemy's arm with them. The scene cuts to students running. Ares, arms crossed, shouts that the foundation of swordsmanship is physical strength, and technique improves with endurance. Exhausted, the students run. Adele thinks he's going to die and wonders how much longer is left. Ares calls out Laurel and Samuel, who are cheating. He angrily asks, who told them to use mana to run? They apologize. Ares yells that they'll start all over again, and both react in despair. Adele runs, thinking these rich kids always resort to tricks, unlike his past. Ares orders everyone to stop and praises the performance. Samuel and Laurel are collapsed, exhausted, while Ares says that Whoever completed the 50 laps can head to the dorms. He announces that those who failed will have extra classes. While the boy trembles, tired but satisfied. He thinks the day was intense and decides to head to the dorm. The scene shows the academy entrance with groups of students. Adele, exhausted, looks for the entrance to the male dorms. A hand touches his shoulder from behind. Startled, he quickly backs away. Then he turns surprised seeing Renee. He wonders what she's doing there. Curious, he asks if Renee is going to the dormitory. She confirms she is. He asks how her first day went, but hesitates, nervous. He wonders if someone upset her, thinking the situation might be misunderstood. Renee stares at him and says something is missing. She clarifies. His training is missing and suggests they do a warm-up together. Even tired, she asks if he'll help her. He thinks she really never gets tired, while she suggests they go to a nearby training area. Adele agrees, thinking that training with a descendant of a deadly sin will be beneficial even if tough. The scene shows the side of the academy. The aerial view reveals a wide training area full of students working out. He observes the place full of equipment and thinks this will help him improve his stamina. Renee points to a heavy bar and asks if he wants to start with that. He asks to try it first, smiling confidently. He says he's been training for years and that this is nothing. As he gets ready under her watchful eyes, Adele strains intensely, his face twisted in pain and sweat, trying to lift the bar. Renee watches him disappointed and says he's too weak, advising him to stop before he hurts himself. Collapsed in exhaustion, he thinks his body, confined all its life, still can't handle it. While Renee with ease gets ready to lift the same weight, she lifts the heavy bar over her head, impressing him and making him think how amazing she is. He concludes that he truly can't compare even with brute strength, and that he needs to train a lot more. The gym shines under the daylight. Adele comments that it's been 2 hours already, and suggests they wrap up and head back. Renee agrees, and he offers to walk her to the dorm entrance. He thinks that beyond just today, she's been training hard lately. Curious about her condition, he decides to check quickly, while she changes her status. Screen appears showing her stats in mana 1297, 1321. Adele notices that despite the training, her mana only increased by 24, thinking it's a slow growth phase, and considers providing an elixir. Renee nearby says she's done changing. Curious, she asks what he's doing. Adele smiles nervously and says yes. They should go. Aerial view highlights the academy's grand architecture. In front of the entrance, Adele tells Renee to get a good rest, and she wishes the same to him. Smiling, sweaty, and exhausted, he thinks he's about to collapse and needs to rest. The camera focuses on the building facade with arched windows. Climbing a staircase, he looks at a paper confirming his room number is 407. Now in the hallway, he confirms he's on the 4th floor. He wonders who his roommate will be, hoping for someone skilled and with a good personality, maybe to bring over to his side. Excited, he imagines it might be his first friend in the demon realm, which feels thrilling. Opening the door, he sees Samuel sitting on the bed with a lollipop. Adele stares as the other glances sideways. Irritated, neither understands the situation. Gritting his teeth, he wonders why that guy is here. Samuel, angry, glares at him, ready to respond. Slapping the table, he shows impatience. Frustrated, he thinks the situation is really a mess. Samuel, biting the lollipop in irritation, thinks that of all people, he ended up sharing the room with that guy. The two stare at each other, confused. Still sitting, Samuel calls him a filthy half-blood. With disdain, the protagonist wonders if he should just get rid of him. Already knowing what to do, he sighs. Near a dresser, he looks down. Samuel abruptly stands up, looking ready to fight, and asks if Adele wants to do it now. Staying calm, Adele asks if he's out of his mind wanting to fight there, and says he's just heading out. While leaving, he tells the hat to have a good night's sleep. Still irritated, Samuel calls him a damn unlucky bastard. His footsteps mark his exit. Walking outside, he thinks that just when he thought he could relax, the annoying guy turned out to be his roommate, and decides to come back later. Curious, he wonders why Samuel is so consumed by rage. If he's not a child of wrath, he reflects that he's the child of gluttony. Wonders if the anger is related to that, just like his own trait, chaos. He thinks he didn't give much importance to the chaos trait until instructor Robolt mentioned it, and now questions what it means, whether it's a mana attribute. Considers whether to ask the information scroll. He decides not to, since the scroll didn't explain chaos when teaching about abilities, and he doesn't want to waste money walking through a green area. Frustrated by not knowing anything, he thinks, maybe he should just find a place to train his mana technique. With a serious expression, he searches for a spot. He looks up and sees a small bird in a tree. Thinking it's a sparrow watching the bird, he thinks it's not exactly a sparrow, but there are birds here too, and finds it cute with a serious gaze. He observes the bird. He thinks that even in Satan, creatures from outside wander around. Meanwhile, a bird with glowing red eyes appears in the background. The scene shifts to the academy at night, with windows lit under a purple sky. A door opens slowly, revealing a glow of light. Entering the room, he sees Samuel sleeping on the bed, and thinks it's good that he's already asleep. Throwing himself onto the bed, completely exhausted, Adele thinks he's so tired he'll pass out, instantly lying down. He thinks he should at least do a bit of mana training. He quickly falls asleep with a purple aura lighting up the room. Seconds later, a shadow is cast beside him. Samuel stands next to the bed, looking down at him with glowing green eyes. Samuel keeps watching Adele sleep. He thinks even his sleeping face is dumb and irritating. He reflects that Adele insulted his family, but he won't be the first to apologize. He sighs in frustration, thinking he doesn't want to waste energy on someone like him. But he remembers the presence Adele displayed in class, which made his heart race. Sitting on the bed, he feels a familiar pain and wonders why. He trembles, surprised, as a purple aura begins to envelop him. He hunches over, groaning in pain as the energy consumes him. With a sweaty and contorted face, he realizes the gluttony frenzy has started again. The green energy glows and he feels as if his organs are drying up. Adele shifts in bed while Samuel struggles against the pain. Looking at him, he thinks he'll have to face that arrogant face until morning. The scene shifts to the Academy Tower. During the day, Adele sits up in bed and wonders what time it is. He hears birds and sees sunlight entering through the window. He looks outside, wondering if the same bird from yesterday has returned. He smiles, finding it curious. There's a non-cadet life form in Satan opening the window. He wonders if someone's trying to spy on him. He suspects it's instructor Eris and decides to use mana scanning. He confirms it's a living creature, not an illusion. He wonders if he should try taming it with food and calls out to it. He figures Samuel has already gone to eat and decides to go before. Breakfast ends with an awkward smile. He thinks he got lost again trying to find the dining hall. Outside, the building's windows are lit by the sun. In the classroom, instructor Idea enters and greets everyone sitting down. He laments missing breakfast and fears he won't be able to focus. Idea stands at the front, announcing she has something important to say. Smiling, she reveals that today she'll choose the class president. The students murmur, surprised by the sudden decision. A student asks how the president will be chosen. Idea explains there was going to be a vote, but she'll name the person herself. Laurel smiles, confident and smug with a radiant glow. She says she'll lead the class alongside someone. Adele smiles softly, thinking that, like in the drama, Laurel will end up leading too. He imagines that with his personality, Samuel also wouldn't be president. Laurel, beaming, declares that everyone should serve her as their king. Adele thinks that despite her lack of intelligence, her charisma is excellent. A student suggests the protagonist as class rep, but another hates the idea of a half-demon in the role. They also discuss Samuel, but another says he's scary. While Adele thinks it's nice to hear his name mentioned, thinking of the ideal person, he believes it should be Laurel. She asks the teacher not to delay and to announce it already. To everyone's surprise, the teacher announces that the chosen one won't be the girl. This causes her to react in shock. In a loud voice, she declares who the new representative is. She picks Adele as president, thinking he seems capable. Hearing this leaves him stunned. Unsure how to react, instructor Idea, with a glowing aura and eyes, considers the risk of naming a half-demon. She calls him President Edel and asks him to lead the class well. Ida explains she has to teach another class, but will make a few announcements first. She announces that for the midterm exam, there will be practical training. Samuel grumbles in annoyance upon hearing about the training. Idea continues, saying the training will be in teams of 3, and they must form teams by the end of the day. Adele thinks about the exams and the training, concluding he'll likely get involved killing humans, considering it essential in combat. With a violent mental image, with a threatening smile and red eyes, He reinforces that killing is essential. Idea ends the class and calls on Cadet Laurel, who looks at her in surprise, smiling. She warns that if Laurel speaks informally again, she'll have extra classes. Adele chuckles, thinking the instructor is putting Fran in her place. Laurel reacts with a frustrated groan. The instructor tells the president to hand in the team list. During the last class, tells everyone to give their best today. Adele thinks about team formation, wonders where they'll train, and if they'll use the dummies the instructor made earlier. Arms crossed, he concludes that if it's those dummies, they won't need teams. He recalls that in the drama, it wasn't time yet for the attack on the human world. He decides that either way, he needs to form a solid team. Glancing sideways at the pink-haired student, thinking he's already chosen, two people are walking and point out that someone is moving. One of them looks to the side seriously. Instructor Aries appears imposing and angry. In her office sits Instructor Idea. Aries bursts in yelling instructor. He stands furious in front of her desk, asking what she was thinking. She smiles, saying, "It's nice to see his serious face again," calling him senior. Aries replies curtly that that's not what he came to hear. He angrily questions her for appointing Adele as class president. Idea explains that it was done that morning and that he, as a senior, should know. Irritated, Aries says appointing him implies something she surely understands. She confirms she does but remains calm. She explains that the command over Class A is temporary. Aries scolds her, still calling her crazy. His face tense with rage. He insists she changed the class president immediately. Instructor Idea stares him down with a serious, piercing look. Tension fills the room as the instructor, arms crossed, listens to Aries, who glares at her with fury. She responds firmly and directly no. He reacts with frustration, clutching his head like he's losing his mind, while she watches him calmly as he spirals with serenity. She says she likes the student, praising his skill and noble lineage, and comments that he's different from the arrogant hares of the 7 deadly sins. He retorts that verified identity doesn't equal trust. Nothing is more dangerous than a dull blade. She sighs, closes her eyes, and relaxes slightly, leaning into her chair. She then declares that she'll handle her class alone, admitting that while she's new, she trusts her instinct for talent. Furious, he shouts her name with force, facing away from the room. He seems frustrated and curses the situation. He thinks with determination that he should have taken over that class, regretting having left someone so dangerous in her hands. Eyes full of anger, he remembers the half-demon, who wounded him in a way he'll never forget, standing near some bars. He notes that Adele's aura is strangely similar to a half-demon's, and although that lineage seems unlikely, he can't help but suspect. Near some bars. He thinks he still hasn't figured out what Adele is planning. He whistles and a bird flies to him. Letting out a cry, he looks at the bird perched on his hand, thoughtful, considering that so far nothing seems particularly strange. He then instructs the bird to keep watching Adele, with a serious face. He thinks he must not take his eyes off him for even a second. Meanwhile, a group of students laughs and chats excitedly in the classroom. Adele smiles slightly, watching his classmates form their teams. Sitting down, he reflects that even as class president, no one approached him. He wonders if it's because his face seems dark. Behind him, he hears someone nervously trying to form a team. Samuel accepts as long as they don't slow him down. Adele watches the student, who has already found teammates, and feels frustrated. He then smiles resignedly, thinking he'll have to take the initiative. A girl's hands clench tightly, showing her determination, as the pink-haired student, thinking no one approaches a half-demon like her. Her thoughts are interrupted by Adele's presence calling her. He turns to her with a dark aura, glowing red eyes and a sinister smile. The girl reacts with a scream of shock and fear. She then sobs, covering her mouth with her hands. Completely terrified, Adele watches her, confused by her reaction, and with a smile explains he was just scanning her mana. He reintroduces himself, saying they briefly met before, and asks if she has found a team yet. She replies hesitantly that she hasn't. Seeing this as perfect, he asks her name. Surprising her, she replies that it's Luna. He says it's a lovely name and suggests she join his team, saying being in the same group as the class president will benefit her. Luna reacts with great surprise and anxiety. Adele leans in slightly, calling her by name, with a sinister smile. He says there's not much time before the last class, and adds that since they're both half-demons, they should get along. He then smiles brightly, urging Luna to just say yes, assuring her that forming the same team is an excellent choice. Laurel approaches, smiling broadly, and asks, "What's so excellent about that?" Laughing, she comments that it looks like they haven't formed a team yet. Seated, Laurel declares that she'll accept them and that they should serve her. Protagonist tries to dismiss her, saying they just formed a team, but Laurel ignores him, saying she heard everything. She then tells Adele that she still doesn't acknowledge his position as class president. Laughing, she claims the true leader of the class is her. Adele just wonders if he should simply reject her, but Laurel, furious, questions why he isn't responding with a smile. He considers that since she hasn't shown any signs of giving up, he decided to let her join the team. He reflects that being the daughter of a deadly sin, it's better to have her close, cheerful and confident. Laurel commands them to trust their leader and follow her. 1 week later at the academy, under a clear sky, the status screen appears with talents and traits. Atal's mana has risen to 1332, and he concludes he'll need an elixir soon due to the slow growth. Sitting at his desk, he watches while thinking that mana is one thing, but he still doesn't understand the chaos attribute. Hoping to get a clue in the magic class beneath him, something makes a sound. He looks at an object stored in a box. Thinking that Crete's solitude is unstable, he considers he'll probably have to bring her along now. Amidst his thoughts, he reflects that at least Samuel is quiet, which is a relief, and thinks that things will eventually get better. The scene shifts to the academy tower. In the classroom, the instructor enters, greeting everyone with a smile. Adele watches her, thinking she seems excited today, and wonders if something good happened. At the front of the class, the instructor announces that today's lesson will be special, saying they'll have outdoor practical training. Adele reacts surprised, thinking that they'll finally do practical training. Finds the outdoor part strange. She smiles, announcing they'll leave Satan and head outside. She informs them the place is called Oregon, and Adele reacts with surprise. He realizes, shocked, that Oregon is the prison where humans who didn't return during the war were held. The instructor explains they'll travel on a dimensional train, and asks them to follow her. The students, including Adele, observe, some excited to leave the academy, thinking it sounds fun to go outside, even if it's not a holiday. Adele thinks everyone's excited just to leave. They'll be shocked once they find out what Oregon really is. A dark image of Oregon appears, while it reveals a special opportunity, more important than the training, something the protagonist could obtain first. Feeling apprehensive, he wonders if he'll manage to find that opportunity, while avoiding so many eyes, noting that the strength of the guards won't be negligible. Laurel approaches, noticing he looks tense, and asks why he seems so stiff. He says it's the first outdoor training and he's a bit nervous, to which she replies, surprised that she didn't expect him to feel that way. She places a hand on his shoulder, and tells him to follow her without worry. He thinks she never gets tired, and wonders if she really trusts Oregon that much. The scene changes with the train wheels running over the tracks, throwing sparks, the imposing fortress of Oregon. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and no matter what happens, he'll obtain it. A dimensional train arrives with sparks and screeching sounds, and a message instructs safe disembarkation at Oregon. Then a foot steps firmly onto the ground. Exiting the train, instructor Idea announces they've arrived at Oregon, a human prison camp, and asks everyone to stay close. Adele and the other students observe the cage-like structures, surrounded by purple energy, feeling the heavy atmosphere. Some talk amongst themselves in the dark, rocky terrain, uncomfortable and questioning if they'll really train there. Instructor Idea confirms with a smile that Oregon is the training site, trying to reassure them by saying they won't face actual battle. Discreetly, Adele thinks it's a twisted hobby to say that, knowing well what really happened. Uniform guards approach, and one of them, suspicious, asks where the group came from, confirming they have permission. Adele thinks the guard is strong at the level of an instructor, and the pressure is noticeable. The guard confirms the authorization and instructs them to follow. Instructor Idea gestures for them to come that way. A group of students walks down a corridor with torches on the wall. A large long insect crawls along the ground, ignored by the passing feet. From above, voices cry out, begging to be saved and freed. The students look up, surprised and confused. Adele and Laurel are among the students observing the place, with expressions of shock and disapproval. Some students cover their noses, commenting on the strange smell, and the feeling that something might jump at them. Adel watches the others while Samuel walks by. Seemingly unfazed, he even thinks it's weird how unaffected he is. The group stops looking around. Adel reacts with surprise as a bright light surrounds the area, indicating a magical reaction. Looking up, he sees the imposing and dark fortress of Organ in the foreground. He thinks that is the true nature of Organ. A wounded and marked human prisoner is seen behind the bars of a place known as Hell. Several thin and ragged prisoners are seen behind the bars. Sitting down, Instructor Idea walks between the cells, explaining that the humans in prison there attacked the demon realm and were involved in brutal crime. From atop the steps, she addresses the students, saying they must be curious about the training. She stops in front of a kneeling prisoner surrounded by dark energy, and with a slight smile tells everyone to pay attention. The prisoner squirms and screams. Overcome with fear, she touches his face while he stares at her, frozen with glowing eyes. She holds an energy orb and orders him to swallow, promising it'll be quick. Samuel watches the scene with a strange smile, and behind him Luna covers her mouth horrified. The dark mass engulfs the prisoner, who screams before disappearing. An explosion of energy and blood fills the space, leaving the students shocked. Adele turns, trying to shield himself from the blood, and lets out a disgusted noise. Idea smirks and says the task is simple: kill a human in your own way. Luna and some students react with nausea, while Adele remains silent in the back. Even in the face of such a cruel death, he feels calm, thinking maybe it's because he's in sync with Adele. He walks forward with determination, intent on surviving, changing that world's fate and fulfilling arson. Adele's wish. Instructor Idea stops in front of Adele, standing in the middle of the blood, and asks if the class president has any last words. He approaches the bars with a knife in hand, ready to back. The blade gleams as it's aimed at the chest of a bound prisoner. Adele focuses while the prisoner trembles under his gaze with hatred. The man shouts that he wishes he had killed more demons, and that the humans will win. A sharp blow is heard, followed by violent splashes covered in blood. Adele smiles, finding the death even more satisfying. After those words, he steps away from the cell, while Ida applauds, saying it was perfect. She turns to the class and orders them to enter a cell and begin their training. Shortly after, she asks the half-demons to step aside, leaving Luna in a panic. The instructor tells them to stand off to the side while Adele watches. Noticing the separation, he realizes there are others like them there, but Luna seems more shaken. Idea then explains that the other cadets have specific prisoners to kill. A group of thin and weary prisoners kneels in a line. Adele observes and realizes they're all half-demons. The instructor says they need to prove they're different from the traitors, while focusing on the marked faces of the prisoners. One of the cadets reacts with disgust and anger. He yells that the prisoners know how much they made them suffer, and lands a violent kick. Adele watches silently, thinking it's begun. Cries for help echo through the place, and Adele just looks up with a heavy expression. Samuel is overtaken by a monstrous entity of green energy that commands devour them. Luna, in tears and sweating, screams in pure despair, clutching her head with both hands. With a sinister smile and glowing green eyes, Sangal thinks he doesn't even need magic to kill. Luna remains curled up, hiding her face while letting out moans of suffering. Arms crossed, Instructor Idea stays watchful. Adele notes that it would be bad if she noticed Luna's state. Idea's attention shifts quickly as someone calls her. Laurel approaches and asks if using her ability is enough to pass. Idea confirms that yes. Technically, it is a dark pink energy surrounds Laurel, affirming that she's linked to the death of the prisoner beside her. She stares at the man who begs not to die, while the other one prepares to kill him. Laurel's face is cast in shadow as she listens to their despair. She then asks if it's done. The instructor replies yes, and that her softness can be corrected with time. Adele watches her back, thinking she doesn't seem to hate humans, just that she's weaker than he expected. Idea crosses her arms again and, smiling, asks if only one cadet remains. Luna's face appears sweaty and panting, overtaken by dread upon hearing her name. With a challenging smile, the instructor demands that she show who she really is. Adele watches concerned, thinking it'll be a problem if she fails. Now overwhelmed by fear, Luna backs away, thinking she can't do it, and begs for freedom. Luna kneels on the ground, defeated with tears and sweat running down her face. She thinks she's pathetic and that even wanting to avenge her mother, she couldn't do anything. Her hands press into the floor with force, showing her frustration at being powerless. Adel approaches and calmly asks if she's okay. She looks at him surprised, and he just smiles gently, asking her to wait a moment. Standing between her and the prisoner, he announces that he'll help her with the training. Luna widens her eyes, shocked and frightened by the idea. With a light smile, Adele picks up the knife and says, they can begin while the prisoner is still there. He holds her hands over the knife, telling her she needs to do it even if she's afraid. Still calm, he asks her to relax for a moment while she is terrified. Together they hold the knife, guided by him, who tells the prisoner that everything will be fine. Luna's face twists in tears and fear of the situation. A close-up shows a tear running from her eye, shining under the light. Adele places a hand on her head and makes a soft sound. She looks at him surprised. He smiles, still with his hand on her, and congratulates her for doing a good job. Then he smiles slightly, glancing to the side, thinking it could have been much worse. Instructor Idea, arms crossed, states that it's obvious what happens to a half-demon who doesn't kill a human: expulsion or worse. She turns to the class president, repeating the title, not understanding what he was thinking. With a defiant smile, she asks if he really believes Luna passed. After that, he responds confidently that yes. Cat at Luna passed. Idea's surprise is immediate. Adele explains that according to her own words, all it took was to kill using the skill, and he helped her because he recognized her value as a healer. Idea reacts in shock and asks if by that logic, he wouldn't help someone without talent. With a cold smile, he confirms that of course, if they had no talent, he'd leave them behind. A close-up on Idea's face shows a slight smile, as if analyzing everything. She gestures and comments that he does whatever he wants, but Warren shall remember his words, asking them to wait while she checks the others. Adele, sweating discreetly, thinks he avoided a crisis and that it's good his answer pleased her, since she wouldn't stand a chance against Ares. He looks at Luna, who sits with difficulty, and says, seems like she managed to pass. She asks, uncertain if he's serious. Relieved, she looks at him and murmurs before fainting. She falls into his arms, unconscious from relief, and he holds her, thinking everything is fine now. Standing beside her, he says she can rest easy. With a dark smile, he thinks the real game is about to begin. Nose organ from the inside, and there's still time on the ground. Purple light shines brightly, suggesting the start of something important. He moves down a dark corridor, passing a guard who doesn't even notice his presence. With a tense expression, Adele thinks the security is tight as expected, and to find the opportunity, he'll need to go underground. Adele becomes fully enveloped in a dark and purple aura. Preparing for something, he looks at his hand wrapped in dark aura. Thinking it worked, he's definitely stronger now. Adele, hidden by the darkness, peeks around the corner, thinking that covering himself in shadow lets him sneak effectively, and he just needs to reach the entrance to the underground tunnel. Still surrounded by the dark aura, he passes near a guard who's looking straight ahead. The guard slightly turns his head, indicating he sensed something, while Adele quickly moves in his aura, with a surprise and sweaty expression. Still in the aura, he wonders if he's been discovered. The guard looks directly in Adele's direction with a glowing red eye, revealing he detected him. The guard turns his back, seeming to interact with something. Adele thinks he felt a subtle shift, identifying the guard as being from Organ, and realizing he needs to move fast. Then a stone wall appears, possibly the entrance to the underground tunnel. Finding an empty cell on the first floor, he notices there's a passage inside it. He prepares to use his technique. Position swap Yui, surrounded by blue energy. He uses the technique, moving quickly with a blue glow and trails. He stops suddenly with a focused expression. Reacting to something, Adele looks up in surprise, identifying a pressure mechanism, and thinking he expected something like this, but now wonders how to descend, falling into the void. He thinks about the depth the protagonist reached in the drama, and decides to use that, counting 1, 2 with his eyes closed and surrounded by aura. He keeps falling, counting up to 6. He throws a glowing knife downward, shouting, now at the right moment. Wrapped in blue energy and digital fragments, he activates the technique position swap the U. His feet hit the ground with impact, surrounded by blue energy and kicking up dust. Looking at a dark and damp corridor, he realizes he's reached the underground channel. Adele, now with a knife in hand, thinks the next step must be the poisonous black slime. 3 poisonous black slimes emerge, and he thinks their poison is lethal on contact. Surrounded by a dark aura and preparing his technique, Fong of Darkness Black Blade Vivi, he decides to aim for the slime's core. From a distance, several blades of darkness surge toward the slimes, piercing them with impact. Smiling, he thinks that knowing their weakness makes the black slime easy to deal with. He is now near a dark body of water, thinking that now he just needs to go in. He dives into the water, creating bubbles and a purple glow. Sinking into the dark water, a voice instructs him not to go any further, saying the great evil is dead, leaving him confused, submerged. He reflects that he never wrote about a great evil, and wonders if that demon leader of an old rebellion was too strong even for the Demon King. Adele looks at a light at the bottom of the water, thinking he'll find out when he gets there. He emerges from the water with effort. Gasping for air, he wonders if he's reached the right place, his hair and clothes soaked. In front of him is a chained skeleton in a dark room. The white skeleton reveals a pulsing heart inside its ribcage, and he thinks this is the opportunity. He smiles confidently and extends his hand toward the heart, thinking that he's finally going to grab it. But he suddenly looks surprised and confused. The skeleton's heart glows a deep red and beats strongly in reaction, and he thinks shocked about the heart. The skeleton moves suddenly, its heart glowing red, sweating, and with a face twisted in terror. He thinks this is madness. Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye.